Yo. 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 Yo.
What's going on, everyone? It is David Palmer, Leo King, and I'm here with Dr. Ann Wohlcke here for History in the Stars. On this March the 12th of 2025, we're going to be looking at the pulse of America. Is it on life support or is it leading the way? How's it going tonight? Ann, how are you?
I'm doing great. I've just been playing pinball all day, as you suggested. It's been sort of crazy energy, and I'm hanging in there and doing great. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? This eclipse energy we're coming into, it's definitely being felt, but I feel there's a lot of back and forth, very Pisces, Virgo, like where's the lines of compassion meet? Too much compassion. And then the Virgo aspect, really clearing things up, trying to get things in a row, but sometimes you try to fix something that ain't broke, or are you trying to fix something that's broke and will never be fixed? I mean, there's a lot of that kind of energy going on right now. It's interesting too, since the last time we had not a total, but it was a lunar eclipse in Virgo at about this degree. Within minutes of it was March of 2006. So with a south node lunar eclipse in Virgo. So it's been a long time. That's what I like about eclipses, is they have you look back in history at your own life and reflect on the 19-year journey always.
Yeah.
What were you doing with your history career back then?
So it's really interesting. I don't know what it is with this particular eclipse, but that was a really pivotal moment for me, because I had started another job at a different institution. And the job that I'm currently at, I went to the interview for that job in March of 2006.
Oh, wow.
And I had my son, who was an infant at that time.
Oh.
And so, yeah, this is a huge moment for me. And I don't know. That's probably why I'm feeling it so much myself. And a lot of what I've been working through has to do with my career as well, and thinking about what I do and how else I might want to push into different types of historical work and all of that. So it's an interesting time.
Yeah, it's interesting because I love that you can reflect back, and it's kind of a pivotal moment to where you have been doing all this work now. Or even I just know you've been, your son's in college now, and so it's kind of interesting seeing the similar energy of like the new evolution of your son, and also at the simultaneous time with your work shift. And for me, it was, okay, I'm going to be doing astrology full time. Like, I can do this. And it was also realizing that my path was no longer going to be the 9 to 5, like, kind of like not astrologer life, even though it did take me a while to finally get that going. But it was like the moments that embraced it fully. My MySpace at this point had astrology everywhere on it.
Oh, really?
And I was making my own little astrology blogs. I don't know if you remember, on MySpace you used to be able to put your own like little blog, like, and you could like write your own, so people could get a little deeper on something. And so it was all like, these are my top 3 and this is my chart, and off of labe.com. Kind of crazy.
Yeah, I wish that I could go back and look. I don't have any social media. I didn't really have any social media at that time, or much, I don't think. And it was, I had been in graduate school and focused fully on just research and reading, and I wasn't into all of that really. But I did a lot of things that were computer based, but we built a lot of things that exist on servers somewhere, or else they've been deleted by now. So
that's true.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of evidence for some of my work from that time.
You know what's really weird is it was just last year. I'm trying to find an episode I was on MTV on, because I did a couple MTV shows, and it's from 2006, and it aired July 11th, 2006, but we shot it at this eclipse time. And last year, Paramount Plus, or Paramount Studios, they own Viacom, which owns MTV, and they wiped all their archives of 35 years. It's really upset tons of people. And so there's been people that have been archiving it through the Internet Archive and so forth, but you know, they've done it's like, why would you do that? I mean, like, you're somebody into history, and archives are everything. It's one of the most revolutionary television networks that, whether it was the music or the shows, but really a lot of the music and kind of the shaping of American culture over the last 50 years kind of jumped from one way to this kind of like way we've seen it for so long through MTV. It's really weird to me, as I was last night doing some of that searching. So much of it's gone now. And it's like, I've never really, are there historical moments that you've ever been through where there's like no archives of situations that make you kind of wonder what happened in that period of history, or why were things lost?
Well, I work with that all the time in my work because I'm an early modern historian. So there's not a lot of evidence. Everything is not reliably documented for the period of time I look at. So when you get to the modern era, you think, oh, everything should be documented. And it's funny because I was just talking about this. Natalie and I did our Gemini Rising show, and JK Ultra was on. So we were talking about research and deep dives. And I was talking about, I don't know if I talked about it or if I've been thinking about this aspect of it, that for the modern world, there is so much evidence that a lot of times you think, why in the world would they have documented that? Why did they keep archives of all of the horrible things they did?
Yeah.
You know, in so many situations. But then I don't understand destroying archive. It actually, you know what? This is something that happens in the past, even in my period of time. The things that are considered to be ephemera, or things that are created in the moment, and maybe they're cultural things or they're shows or theater, those sorts of things don't always get preserved. So, for example, in my period of history, there are a lot of playbills for plays that happened at the fairs that I've researched, and so you don't have the actual plays that were performed, but you have these notices so you know what was performed. So maybe one day they'll have the MTV show descriptions, and people will know what the shows were about. But I can't believe they didn't preserve that. That's definitely historical. It's got to be somewhere.
Well, a lot of it, some of the deep dive I've done is that a lot of it was tape. MTV was about tape.
Yeah.
And so they filmed a lot of their shows. A lot of the music videos even were cheap, right? Mm-hmm. The first ones, they used tape. And tape is probably the worst thing to archive because it goes bad. Like, you know, film reels at the same time have to be preserved in a very, you know, specific way. And so it becomes kind of a money issue, and then there's so many tapes, and it's trying to get them back to digital, and some of them break. I mean, I do that here with my own tape stuff, and so that's one element of it. It was kind of the worst timing of how to record television and tape things. And so, but you know, it was interesting because a lot of people from all different parts of our culture, like the Black community is really upset because most of the culture that they really inspire America through, and their culture is through MTV. And I can totally understand how, like, you're erasing all their history. of what they've done over the last, 35 years of music and television. And then you look at it from all different cultures, everybody has a deep connection to it. And I really am just like, well, I can understand the logic behind some of it, but then there's another part where I'm like, there's one archiver who has a website up, and she's like, to try and get people to actually want to do this like extra work, not enough people interested. They want to complain, but they don't want to help. So that's kind of an interesting part too, is like,
well, maybe they'll have a society of Preserve MTV or something, which is funny that Natalie and I went to see Meet Me in St. Louis a few weeks ago at the American Cinematheque, and it was part of their nitrate film festival. So these old films that were done on nitrate film have a limited lifespan, and they deteriorate, but also they catch on fire easily when they're projected. So, it was also sort of like, ooh, is anything going to happen while we're watching this film? There was the added element of that. But yeah, I think these sorts of things that are of their times, there's a limited lifespan for all sorts of things. Or even when you think about all of the archives that you have from your family, and going through those boxes when you moved, right? With the big move, when you look through them all and you think, wow, your grandparents had saved, for example, all the maps from their journeys around the United States. And sometimes there were notations in there too, right?
and a logbook too.
Yeah, but so if you think of all of that, it's wonderful to preserve all that and save it, because they don't really print maps anymore.
Right.
But where are you going to put all that stuff? Or even the old letters that are priceless. It's just, after a while, it becomes, how do you manage all of the materials?
I think it does become care. I mean, we have a national archives, right, for the United States of America. Mm-hmm. And I think it's an important thing for us to keep and maintain. And for me, I'm the archive of the family now, and so I have 5 storage places. So
When did go figure that?
I just was in one of them or 2 of them this weekend, and it's like, oh yeah, I forgot I have that, but the prices just keep going up out of nowhere, and it's just like, so it becomes a place where it's like, you got to have a little bit of hoarder, maybe a little bit of Taurus in you to be a good archiver. Because it's not just maybe like the Virgo archiving part, but it's the holding on to it and maintaining it when nobody wants to look at it, or even you don't want to look at it, right? It's about preserving something that might not be a book or a file or a letter that might not be looked at for 100 years or 50 years or longer. Like in the case with some of my family stuff, you've done a lot of it with me. It's like, wow, look at this little envelope. Nobody ever opened the envelope. What's inside the envelope? It's over 120 years old. Let's open it. It's really fascinating. I think, that was like my great grandmother in college in the early 1900s, and
Wasn't
all the
it
dance. What would they used to do in the old days? Dance cards.
She had dance cards, but she also had that one envelope that was something like, who do I like? Well, and it was open it up and see the name of the guy, or there was something like that in it.
Yeah.
So,
I know, and that was, you think of that kind of stuff more like childish now, like Valentine's Day in elementary school or something. But in college, no, it was a big deal. And the dance cards, like you said, the date. And for her to even have pictures back then of them out doing things was really cool. But I think, as we look at the pulse of America, and is it on life support or not? It's all based off this MTV thing. No, I'm just kidding. But actually, it's kind of an interesting, weird way. That wasn't our intention right away to go into that. But it is kind of an interesting thing. Like, you can look at that. That just happened last year in the summer of 2024. So, when it comes to how we look at history, what I do find interesting, and this isn't really, I think, the deep part where we're going to today. It's more surfacey, but I like the intro into this, is that I always thought MTV would be a forever kind of, this is kind of a big part of American history. The same way I look at like the 60s, or the same way I might look at like the Roaring 20s, right? Like, but I think in all time periods, when you're in it, you feel like we're going to remember this forever and the world will remember this forever. But it's like, no, not a lot of people will remember unless you were alive to really understand MTV the way it was and to feel it that way. And it's weird because it's still a channel. Yet it has nothing to do with what we grew up with, or nothing to do with the energy or the vibe or the people or the shows or anything that.
Do they even do Real World anymore, or any of the shows that you were on?
Well, they took the last seasons and put them on Paramount Plus. So I was the first season of Parental Control, and I was the third season of Next. So that was 2005 and 2006. Not the old ones. I guess I'm with all those other ones and the old ones, and those were all the highest ratings. It's so weird that MTV lost its ratings with the shows that they kept. But I'm lucky I was able to have my Parental Control. But my next one is on some tape somewhere I've never been able to find. Actually, I think I know where it might be, and this eclipse might bring it back up. So I might find it. Just,
These are all the sorts of things that one day some historian in 100 years will come across a videotape of one of those shows that wasn't preserved. And they'll think, I found a hidden document. This is a new archive. And then they'll make a groundbreaking study all about, these, reality television or the role of music and video in our culture, because it is a really transformative moment. When I actually watched, my son is here on spring break, and he has this obsession with the Beatles that he's had for a very long time. And I know not everybody enjoys them, but many, many people do, obviously. And so he wanted me to finally watch the Beatles film Help, which is on YouTube. I probably shouldn't say it because someone might go take it down. Right. Because he was like, it's still there. Let's watch Help. So we watch it, and I'm like, this is very interesting. It's a really kind of crazy film that doesn't make a lot of sense, but you can see how it's like the beginning of music videos. Right. Because they do a lot of scenes where they just go out and act goofy, and they're like on the ski slopes or wherever it is, and music is playing. And so that's like the first time people started to think to do music and put some sort of pictures, moving pictures with it, right?
Well, I think they were stuck in the studio with Sir George Martin all the time, who's very serious about the recording and how proper it was, which is important because they are so well, they are one of the biggest groups of all time in the whole world, and one of the most renowned, and they will stay that way. But that's also because their producer was one of the best in the world, but he's also a knight. He's been knighted. Sir George Martin.
Paul has now too, right?
Right, and that's another interesting fact, right? McCarthy was also knighted, but there was a rebellious aspect to them because they weren't allowed to bring that into the studio, and they also had the Who were the wild ones that they eventually had to compete monetarily with, so they had to express themselves, and Sir George Martin was took it very serious, no alcohol and playing around the studio, and very classically done. But it's important because he did record them better than most people are recorded. So it was kind of their way of. I only know this because I was friends with his son, George Martin's son, Gregory Martin, who's an astrologer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Maybe that's a family thing and why the Beatles lasted so long.
I mean, the Beatles are nothing without Sir George Martin, the producer. And then he came to America and produced the band America. And did the same thing. It was like, let's make Ventura Highway, all those songs. That's the producer of the Beatles. And that's why those albums sound so good, because they're recorded like masterful.
Yeah, and they were so innovative and made so many advances in the way that they recorded things, and weren't afraid to go out and experiment and try new sounds. And that whole time is really interesting for kind of the transition to the popular culture that then led to something like MTV. But how this connects to America on life support, we'll get there. But one of these days, I really want to do a show where we talk about, because I think this was 2006 as well, isn't it? When you saw Daft Punk at
Coachella, that's coming up. Yeah.
Was that 2006?
Yeah.
We have to
April
do a show about
2006.
that. I think you have so many interesting stories to share about that too.
Yeah, I mean, and that's still, it still is said to have been like, the people who were there, the 100,000 people who got to see that are the luckiest 100,000 people to ever live, especially in the genre of dance music. And also the reason why you see DJs today and they're like, oh, big and lights and all that stuff, that was not a thing until Daft Punk used the first LED lights ever on a stage. And plus, nobody knew. I didn't know what they were going to do. I just knew that they DJ'd, and yeah, sure, they wore some like robot helmets for an album. But I mean, it was just a group. As a young raver, I used to have their records, and nobody knew what they were going to do and come out and the alien spiritual stuff that they do live for that one show, because then they did do a tour in 2007, the Alive tour, and they didn't do what they did at the one show at Coachella where they revealed it to see how the world would take it. I was lucky I was there. It actually changed me forever. So actually it was right after the eclipse that we're in right now that
Really?
just within that month, like a month later, I was at Coachella. So for Daft Punk. Yeah. So that's kind of crazy, actually. And that's all when everything turned on astrology wise. So it was also the time I was doing reality shows too. So, and that's where it's kind of weird, is like, I wanted to actually take this image that we, inspired by you actually, because I was kind of in I don't know, Ann, what are we going to do right now for today? What did I call this one? I called it Pulse of the USA. Here we go. I just wanted to show this image for people so they can maybe see it a little bit better than what they see on the thumbnail. I'm going to take us off real quick and just go just to the image. Oh, hold on. Here we are. I love this concept you did. You have Lady Liberty. You want to describe what you thought when you thought of this?
Well, what I was thinking was, we talked a lot about America's Pluto return, and a lot of astrologers have kind of talked about that. But with all this Neptune energy, and we've also talked about the Civil War and these eclipses, and there's all sorts of stories from every angle right now of what is going on, what does it mean for America? So I was thinking, what if we actually just sort of diagnosed America itself and looked at, well, what is America supposed to be? Like, if we take the pulse of what was it created to be? So if we think of America as an individual, what does the chart say about who Lady Liberty is supposed to be? Who are the hidden enemies? Who are the allies? What's its purpose? All those sorts of things.
One, I love that because I love the way that you brought that up, to have like a mad scientist looking at it, and it's almost like Lady Liberty's being diagnosed, because whether it's the world diagnosing America right now, I mean, we do that too. Americans diagnose the world back.
Right.
But there's all these different angles and people kind of like trying to determine that within the government, the citizens of it, and so forth. I think you had also brought up to me also like the Pluto return that we just finished. Yeah, I think the first thing I would say is that question is one thing that's a guarantee in America since the Declaration of Independence, of the question of what it is. I I think that there are some things that are solid, like the ideas of freedom. But I think that when it comes to how it's executed has been the one constant change, but it was meant to change.
Yeah.
Like I think some people forget that the idea of a republic and the people to rule as the ones who can be elected and be in the positions of the federal government, and also state governments and local jurisdictions, it's meant to shift and change, and also the freedom of press and the way it is. So even if the media is propagandaing you to believe it's one way, I mean, it's an open coin toss all the time on the direction of how it will go. That's really freedom. Freedom is not bundled up and it's always got to look this one way and be executed this one way. Because I think there's been a lot of questions, like how much. I think when I just think of it, we'll show America's chart here in a second, but and then in the astrology community, there's a lot of debate on what chart to use. Everybody says they know the chart, right? But to me, it's like the question of America's chart is about power. Because the question about America and its inception was power. Pluto at the end of Capricorn is about power. So to me, that's like the big thing is like how much power does the three branches have, and within those three branches. But there's something special about the executive being where, no, it's not a king, but I was thinking about it one way the other day. I was like, there has to be somebody who can do things when extraordinary circumstances happen, as it's written in the Federalist Papers and so forth. They had to think of those things, and that's why the commander-in-chief is the president of the military, because you could have a military or a militia at the time that thinks they know better and they're going to do it whether they like it or not, and no, the people elected a president to say no. So the questions on how much power the executive has, it's about the checks and balances. It's not, sure, there's some stuff written, but there's not a lot of stuff written. And that's where it becomes more open interpretation on, well, where did the people vote for a president that eventually selects, if they're lucky enough to have an open selection moment for Supreme Court justices, does it sway a certain way? Because you could be mad at results of elections or, well, it's unfair that the Republicans have more picks now in the Supreme Court. Well, you go back 100 years, it was the other way around. So really, it's more of the swaying. And to me, when we go into the chart, it's a Cancer. That's known for sure. And so this place is going to have comfortable moments and very uncomfortable moments. And every home has that. Every human feels that. And I think that we're at a moment right now where, it's meant to sway wherever it was supposed to sway based off where people are at. And there's a big part about people in the chart as well with the moon in Aquarius. So, that's the interesting part is I think more people have to be called to make action in America in a very big way, because moon in Aquarius is very disconnected. So like big things happen, but most people are like, well, okay, next thing. It's not until it really is like everybody's lining up on the same emotional issue that America really makes some big shifts. What do you feel?
Interesting that you brought it up. I mean, it is true that it's a Cancer, and to think about it as a home, that's what I'm thinking about. It's so interesting that if you think of something like the Civil War, the imagery that came up for Abraham Lincoln was a house divided cannot stand, right? And that's true. So we have our moments of being a dysfunctional home and moments of being a comfortable home, moments of being a home where some people, like in some phases, they want it to be open to more people in the world, and other people want it to be a more exclusive space, right? And to think of it in that way is so interesting. So I will look forward to what we're going to see in the charts today. But the other thing I was wondering is, since we always celebrate Independence Day as well, we're always celebrating our birthday. And so in the case of the United States, does our solar return chart say something as well? Should we be looking at that?
That'll be interesting to look at.
So those are my sorts of questions.
Those are great questions. So, that's right. We got this little space in between. I'll put it right here. Now, I use the chart that's used by the majority. And that's actually kind of how America works, right? The majority of the electors, the voters, the majority that's in power, right?
But could I ask you, of course I want to see the other side, but what is the other chart? What are the other charts that are
Some
out
people
there?
think it's a Scorpio ascendant, meaning that, if you look at the chart, that you got to look at it as either some people look at it because it was begun on July 2nd, the writing of the Declaration of Independence. So some people use that chart. So that's putting the sun 2 degrees back. Others look at it sometimes as Gemini ascendant. So in the morning, when the first signatures were rolling out, this is where it was said, done, okay, go make the copies. Because we have to remember that there wasn't just one Declaration of Independence. It was like, there was the main one, and then it was like, now make all these other copies that all the 13 colonies have, and then we need to send one to the king, right? So it's kind of like, I'm an astrologer who goes, when I look at things, we base our birthday off the moment you come out of the womb, complete as a baby.
But is it the first breath or?
So it's the first breath.
First breath, okay.
But the idea of like the process of building the baby is through the whole 9-month process of pregnancy and going through all the different trimesters. And sure, that's where I get into prenatal eclipses and people's charts and stuff, what's happening in the womb, or even using, life, like going into different deeper parts in people's life and what happened while in the womb. But the way that the declaration was formed to me is like, okay, July 2nd is like labor. We don't count labor as the date and the time. It's the moment of the first breath. And the first breath to me would be the last signature and handing it up and being like, it's the same way we pick a baby up. Or if I guess maybe
Simba.
I was just going to say Simba and Lion King, right? You know what I mean? But it's just, that's what happens, right? The baby gets pulled out first breath and it's looked at and put in mom's arms, right?
Yeah.
And that's the same way I look at the declaration. So that would be this chart, which would be later in the day, of course, but at 5:10 p.m., Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and the sun setting at the end of the day. It makes more sense to me than the moment the first signature is signed, because it needs, if it's a Declaration of Independence, it has to be all the signers of the Declaration of Independence. So everybody has to be involved. So the intention of the signature not signed yet is not defined until it's signed.
Right. Okay.
That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to have their own.
And when someone was mentioning that, I can't see it because of the way that my phone shows, but some astrologer said it's a Gemini rising, and you mentioned that would be the morning of that day when
Correct.
they started?
Opposite of the ascendant right now. It's Sag, right? So that was in the morning.
Yeah, unless they all lined up there and just zipped through it and signed it. But I think it was all day. We looked into this before, I think.
It was all day.
Because people
Not
would
everybody.
be coming and going, and
Not everybody was just standing there. The way that the portrait of all of them standing there. That's the moment they want you to think, right? It's more the moment of like it's done, maybe. But it's weird. They still show people signing and everybody standing there.
But at that point, they still could have, until it was all the way signed and someone took it and decided, all right, are we really distributing this? They still could have taken it back. So even in the morning,
and there were errors.
It could have
there
been.
were errors in even the one that we have today, like let's add a little word in here, and let's cross that out, because that's a long piece of paper, and you're using a Quell inked pen. Like, you gotta write in that style of cursive. Like, it's not easy. And, I think about the human aspect of it, of like, am I really going to be a rebel right now? Like, am I really going to go against my king with all of the, let's say 700 plus years of kind of ancestry of like going with what the monarch says?
Right. And you think about at the time, how the people would have thought. It really was that somehow where you were born in society was connected to a divine order.
Yeah.
So in the back of some people's minds could have still been, am I going against the divine power, whatever it is, by
Right.
going against this king, even as crazy as he is and all of that, right? But
Somebody had said in the chat, well, America's hell is Scorpio. And it's like, well, that's what, you can look at it as this is where there's different ways to look at the astrology, but one, it's a Sag ascendant. So the sun in Scorpio is technically an 8th house placement if you use the whole sign or just understanding the position. 2, the North Node in Leo there is in the 8th house. It's got Pluto and Capricorn at the same time. We've all seen all the hidden elements of Pluto and Capricorn, especially about government. So, it's like, does it have to be Scorpio? Like, it's kind of like every Scorpio that's ever tried to define America, every Scorpio president has been never liked, very low ratings, and also never been trusted. So if it was a Scorpio rising, everybody would align with it more, but they don't. And if you think of the idea of like hope, America's always been the beacon of the world, Lady Liberty that the French gave us. There's an inspiring lesson that everybody's watching to learn what real freedom looks like. So to me, the Sag ascendant makes way more sense than the Scorpio ascendant one. I understand there's a lot of secret aspects. There's, of course, a lot of, divisions of this government that are very top secret. The idea of it's because other governments don't even show you that they do that. America's transparent enough because the people are around that we have to say, no, you can't look at this. It's top secret. You don't see other countries floating around like top secret. Like America's like made a whole thing about it. Media and all that stuff. Like I just don't, it's like I don't watch BBC News and like nobody's trying to find the top secret government documents, because really the kings or the queens, the monarch's going to have all the weird stuff. So, and you don't want to question too much there.
Yeah, I'm thinking, how does that work? I think whenever the British government has done anything reprehensible, there's an
tabloids.
inquiry. There's an inquiry into it, and Parliament comes together, and then they take all sides and listen to the stories, and then finally rule, yes, maybe we were wrong. But
it's more hearsay, like the whole Meghan Markle thing and what she said on Oprah, and then it came out that the Queen, right? Like, well, she's a part of it, but it looks like Charles, said, oh, that baby gonna look too black or whatever, that whole scandal. It's always been tabloid stuff, is like the darkest secrets going on inside the monarch. And then even during like the COVID stuff, Prime Minister Boris Johnson was having a party, and it was the tabloids. We have a video of him having a party, right? Like, that's not that deep, top secret stuff. They actually you know, the idea of like all this more like X-Files stuff, America, especially after World War II, it became a thing. Right. It's not World War I. We're looking for top. Nobody's like asking for FOIA reports, like Freedom of Information Act much. Nobody's looking for these top secret. It all happened after Roswell and after World War II. Like people don't realize that. Like it's not like America. Everybody's looking for the top secret. What's secretly happening?
See, that's why I want to get to who are we supposed to be as a nation? How were we established? What is our astrological profile? Overall, not just thinking about Pluto, but also I'm curious. I just looked this up. Because I was wondering. Okay, so when did the British government receive the Declaration of Independence? And
but 66 days or something after, or what?
Yeah, I looked. It's.
I mean, that was
August.
like they always said 66 days to get back.
I had the date, and now it's not here. Where was it? I think it was on the first. It was where I came.
Well, you just showed one date, and I want to cover that for 1 sec. The
August
July 2nd date, where the idea at the convention was, let's go through with this declaration.
Yeah.
So people using that chart, that's an idea, but those people have to go through with it. Mm-hmm. So that's a quick baby, 2 days, but still, it's still a baby that has to be born. It has to go through the process of it.
Right.
So the idea of declaring independence is a chart, but that's not the chart to base what happens, because there's a solid understanding that it's the actual thing that everybody's come together, form, do, and write it out, and then we're going to follow this and then send it to King George.
So then when he got news of it, August 10th, 1776. Wow, that's pretty.
Oh, yeah. So at 27 days plus 10, 37 days. That was the fastest ship ride back then. They got good winds. I guess it was in the summer, so could have got some good winds and not had to deal with the cold much.
Yeah, I think that was pretty normal for the. So if you think of it, July 4th and August 10th, I think that was pretty normal for them.
Yeah, that's pretty quick.
But then it says, though, that it's interesting because it said on July 2nd, they voted. Okay, wait. On
they
June
voted
20th,
at the Continental Congress.
Lord Howe issued a declaration to colonial governors in his position as one of the king's official representatives. While Howe possessed little authority, this declaration gave him the power to pardon any number of British subjects in response to the tumult and disorder of the times. This appeal to colonial governors angered American colonists who felt insulted that they went over their heads. The Continental Congress did not receive this declaration until July 18th. Once they read his declaration, they ordered copies to be published in several gazettes to convince the good people of the United States that the valor alone of their country is to save its liberties. And I think that's an interesting first test also. It would be kind of going alongside the same time that the Declaration of Independence being drafted and signed, there's also the threat already that the government's going to try to convince people to not go along with it. And I mean, it just seems like right off the bat, already we were being convinced, or Americans were being convinced, or that's part of how it was built as a nation. This aspect of people trying to meddle and to convince you that actually you don't want those rights. You want to do this instead. Don't you still need the king to help you out? Like, that's part of who we are, is that, I mean, maybe the constant anxiety of, if we're a home, who's our father? Right? Who's the head of the household?
So that's where in the chart, it's very easy that it would be an ethical, philosophical question and opinion and belief. So the Sag Ascendant is big questions that have long answers and also might not have the answer that's for sure by all sides. And there's going to be confliction, beliefs, but also this idea of freeing oneself over a new ideology that a group of people that is larger than just the people signing, but that have the backing of the people in those colonies is very sad. And there's a lot of Gemini in the chart too, like Mars in Gemini, right? Uranus in Gemini. So there's also an idea that's spreading rapidly at that time, and that if you see the Mars in this chart, that just in the 2 weeks prior had made its conjunction to Uranus. So it was like an exponential rapid fire up to that July 4th point that was the people and getting the info and making sure all 13 colonies are willing to do it, and to get to the Continental Congress and make the vote on July 2nd to actually, okay, let's do it, and how fast they were able to get the declaration signed and done and stamped and let's do this and get it out to the king is another part of that chart to understand. Is like, okay, that Mars-Uranus conjunction happened 2 weeks prior. So that means the 2 weeks building up to this chart was massive. Like everybody had this idea, and the ideas are being thrown around. And so if you erase the Sag rising, or you don't look at the chart, you just look at the planets, and you have to understand their timings. And you can do that by going, well, Mars was full speed. And you look at Uranus, Mars was going quick, or Uranus was going quick, doing 3 minutes a day. So, you know, that's a fast Mars. So you just do the midpoint of that, or you just cut it. How many degrees apart is that? It's like, oh, it's had 8 degrees, Uranus, almost 9. So we can say 9 and 21. And you just go, oh, okay. Yeah, like about 2 weeks to 2.5 weeks, because it's 40 degrees a day, Mars. And so that is a big part of it, is the question. So some people might think it's manipulation and Scorpio. Scorpio doesn't tell you what it's going to do. So to have town hall meetings, right? To have people gather and have orderly debates that can sometimes get a little disorderly, but not to where they're killing themselves over that. It's Sagittarius. It's debates that are happening on a bigger scale. Like debate itself is Libra, which of course Saturn's in Libra, right? So like it was a very big time of debate. And also it's a sun in the 7th house. And that's, I think, where this country in Cancer, with the Mars and the Venus and Jupiter all in that 7th house. So a lot of people think, well, we have to always be allies. Well, I like Washington's view of like, we are here to be neutral allies and make sure that we take care of ourselves first. So sun in the 7th house, we align with what takes care of ourselves and aligns well. But if we remain neutral, then we're never on the wrong side. Mars, especially with war, Mars in the 7th house. That we can't go fight the war for other people, but if it's in alignment and it's of truth and we're still okay at home, okay, we can do that, but we stay in a neutral role, because if we pick too many sides and stay in marriages with people for too long, because every 7th house sun goes through multiple marriages. So this country is always going to have allies and then break its allegiances. You know, that might trigger sun in the 7th house people, but that's just their life. You know, they go through multiple marriages. There's never one marriage. I've never found one 7th house sun, even in all of my work looking at, oh, no.
You would think that with the sun there, it's all about,
well, it's at its fall. It's at fall when it goes in the 7th house. Now, not technically off essential dignities, but placement-wise, the sun's falling. Right. So it's like the idealization of some relationship, right? The sunset, you know, like or dinner that you have on a date, like, oh, this relationship might be so great, but it only lasts so long. And then
so everybody's ideal date, walking on the beach at sunset.
Correct.
It's a fleeting moment that's not going to last.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, what's interesting about that, David, is at the time when the United States was founded, most people, like George Washington's wife, for one, most people were going to be married more than once or have more than one wife or more than one husband because of the number of people that died. Or,
Right.
You know, and you needed to continue on. So it's the idea of a spouse, I think, that's really like your helpmate or your co-business owner. So I wonder if you're a seventh house sun, would that mean you look at your partnerships more as business arrangements? And there could be other parts of the chart that show you're also romantic and you love and you're into love and all of that. But marriage itself is a contract.
It is. And that the house of contracts is there in the seventh house. If you're a seventh house sun, you got to look at it more like you're in a relationship until you have realized everything about it. And every seventh house sun jumps into a new relationship once they found the new one they want to get in.
So they don't leave their old
They
one
don't leave
find
until
the new
they
one?
found the new one. So I'm going to use a good example. France, at this time this chart was done, was not our ally yet. Right? That was something Benjamin Franklin was tasked with to go figure out. And that whole story is not oh yeah, they just said yes. The king didn't want to do that because I don't want England starting a war with us. So it was all hidden in France and done through private enterprises and through people who wanted to make money. You know, people forget about that. And why did it take so long for them to get the ships? Because it takes a while for the king to finally accept it. And once the ships come and we get out of the war at 1781, it's like, do we go back and bring soldiers and go help the French during their revolution? No. Not one.
Yeah.
So the idea that this is the idea floating around American politics today, and especially the media, is like, we're always there for people and we need to be for this country. That's not in our DNA. We are not, like, you choose to help us, and we eventually help France in World War II and show up on D-Day. So the karma comes back eventually.
And even you could say World War II would be, yeah, we did help them, but we didn't rush right in, right? It was like the concept of marriage at this time, and I'm hoping that I'm not offending people by equating America with this, but at this time, if you're going to negotiate a marriage, you want to make sure there's a dowry on behalf of, like, your spouse is going to have a dowry.
Right.
You're not going into it just because of pure love. That comes up a little bit later than this, that the idea of companionate marriage comes up, you know, close to this time, but it's still a little bit after this. So you're still thinking of a marriage as a good contract. So for example, World War II, people have their different opinions about how much FDR knew about what was going on and why we didn't just rush into the war. But it was, and people talk about Pearl Harbor now and what was really going on behind that. But the fact is that we waited a long time. And in World War I as well, we waited a really long time before intervening, because it's almost like we want to make sure the prenup's been signed or whatever it is, that we want to make sure if we enter this contract with you, we're going to be receiving a payoff. And I would say that's why a declaration of war in the American case, here I'm being the astrologer, but in the American case, it would seem like a declaration of war is very important for any kind of engagement we enter, because whenever we've done these police actions or just gone around the world to, like Vietnam, for example,
Right.
they don't turn out as well because we don't have a clear objective. We don't have it negotiated. We don't know for sure what we're doing.
Right. And no conflict where we've done that has actually ever resulted in a win. Right. I think that America, too, the contract that really has to look at is because Jupiter is in the 7th house and Cancer there, and it's a Sag ascendant. It's the contract with the natural rights that it's fighting for, right? Mars in the 7th. It's this, God gave us natural rights as human beings to live as we want to live and rule ourselves, not by a king. So Jupiter is the understanding of, especially like these higher ups, kings, all these, right? Look at Jupiter that way. Zeus, the great god, right? In the seventh house, but it's one in Cancer. It's exalted, where the king is making it about the home. And then the moon in Aquarius, which they knew, right? When they said, especially, I don't care if you're using sidereal or if you're using tropical, that moon's at 27 Aquarius. The moon was in Aquarius on both systems. So, there's something about the contract of, it's about the people, but it's about what home is like and what's fair, because it was about fairness. It was really a declaration of debate. It was a declaration of like a lawyer's perspective of looking at things. Like, you tax us, we do all this work, we're not being treated fairly, we're not being represented. And that's where the Saturn square to the sun is. And that's the big one, is that this country only does well when it has to go through tough times and everybody has to work hard. So any chart with sun square Saturn is the hardest worker. So the idea that America will ever turn into a place where it's just lackadaisical, easygoing, and nobody has to work and everybody's going to have basic income will never happen here.
It's funny because even the utopias that I can think of that have been attracted to United States, or from early on, people coming here to try to set up their utopia, like the Puritans, right? Mm-hmm. Or if you think about the 19th century, you had the New England people, various types, trying to set up these utopian communities, but they were always established around work.
Yeah.
Right? That what we're going to come together and all together work and be godly, or work and do whatever it is that they do. But it was always work being part of it.
Yeah, and what happens in this case is Sun square Saturn kind of is a delay in waiting till the last minute to then do the hardest work, but there's kind of that edge to it, right? So it kind of like society and the country kind of gets a little bit lazy, and then it kind of gets into a corner, and then we got to turn it on now and do the hardest job ever. And it's like, it's a little hyperthymic in that way, like needing the pressure in order for it to actually feel like it's comfortable. And America thrives under pressure. It does not thrive under peace and civility. It actually doesn't. It only feels together when we're trying to figure out what the relationship is that we have with the country under extreme amount of pressure. That's Saturn in the 10th as well, but in Libra, exalted, squaring Jupiter. And how funny, we're in a Jupiter square Saturn right now. We're also in a Chiron return of the country right now. Exactly, right? We've been in this Chiron return for the last 2 years. And so understanding the identity of it is never going to stay the same. Going back to like the MTV thing, it's never going to be an MTV America. It's never going to be a Roaring Twenties, or it's never going to be defined by what we did in World War II fully. It actually is defined by this understanding that the world, Sag, ascendant, the world is understanding where the home of freedom is. And what are they doing? And then we are being observed.
So is that in the chart that we're being observed then?
Yeah, we're the teachers of what life is like without a monarch. Now, whether you think that this group or that group is taking control or yada yada, it doesn't matter, because that's part of the understanding of it, right? It's like, what happens when there is no monarch? Right? What does it look like for people to have free speech and say whatever the hell they want? What does it look like for people to have guns and have the guaranteed Second Amendment right to not only, it's not about guns, it's about form militias and to have arms and to protect themselves and defend themselves. No countries have that. And it's funny because that's second. What's more important first is freedom of the press, religion, speech. So that's all very Sagittarian. It's more of about principles with uncertainty, right? Like the adventure of the principles that it carries. And so that's why it's also a place about adventure, right? Most people come to travel to America to feel like they can either experience some sort of adventure, or I want to go to the place where this event happened that I can learn more about it. So whether people like this place or not, this is the place that shows people an experience that they can't get anywhere else. That it will never be defined like everywhere else. It's always going to be different. And it's not because of the moon in Aquarius. It's because of that Sag ascendant with that sun in Cancer there. It's this place that's really not definable. Chiron and Aries at the same time too. It's really not definable, especially a sun in Cancer with a Chiron in the 4th house. That is so this country. Like, yeah, this is all about home, but what does home look like? Because if you think about it, like people in the West during the 40s, 50s, 60s, the Wild West was home for many who were going into the new territories, the new world. Lewis and Clark before, the idea of going across to finding we're on the whole continent and to see the other side of it. It's very adventurous. But also at the same time, the Wild West was home at one point. The Gold Rush was home at one point. San Francisco was home at one point. Now it's not. Now it's this place. Now more people are in Florida right now because it's more free. It changes. And it's even more funny because the home that houses the federal government isn't a state. Washington, D.C. is not a state. So it's a district that's a federal district. So there's that interesting weird home aspect where home is not home to the states. So you can't say Washington D.C. is the home. Right? It's the building from 13 colonies to 13 states to 50 states. That's what defines the home. Sag. That it's an expanding country. So like crazy example that's happening now. Greenland. I don't know if you saw, but the election results just happened in Greenland and they want to leave Denmark now and they want to go independent and have their breakaway. And they couldn't believe they won in the election last night. And there's a lot of people on that on that side of the aisle in that government that wants to talk with Trump about America. They don't want Denmark anymore. So is America really going to expand? Maybe. I'll have to look more into that astrology, but I just saw that last night. And then as a Sag ascendant, this country is always expanding its territory. It's always expanding the states. So it's expanding territory in the states. I mean, we have Puerto Rico, for example. It's just a territory. We let it participate in certain ways, not fully, right? We have Puerto Rico. We have the U.S. Virgin Islands. Hawaii, of course, was just a place that we had. It wasn't a state. That's just crazy during World War II. Hawaii was this military place.
Right, yeah.
The other part about Uranus and Gemini is where we start looking at the areas of where we want to kind of look at and go, well, that's a good idea. We could have that place and people could show up or be here. I don't know, because it's always the Uranus and Geminis that bring out the expansion of the territory too. But it's always with the war because Mars is paired with it. Mm-hmm. So even the idea of NATO that follows, World War II, it's kind of like, well, now we're sending our troops and we have people in Europe and we get to be part of all that. But is that where it gets overloaded? How much can the country handle? It kind of wants that pressure. I mean, the only way that pressure has ever worked, I mean, let's not forget, like the British came back in 1812 and burned the White House, and they tried, but it didn't work out. But at the same token, it rose again. And, you know, that's really the only invasion that's ever happened here. It's not a place to really be invaded much, but it can happen.
Where does it show that in the chart that it's not invaded a lot?
Well, that it has. So this might sound crazy. One thing that seventh house suns do really well, right, is they determine if the relationship's going to happen or not. They're going to determine if they're going to enter into the agreement or not. Right? So a lot of people want seventh house suns. It's only if they want you, and then when they're done with you, they check you out. So it's kind of funny. More people want America than want to invade America. Want to be part of, like, well, let me get a little bit of that. Let me get in the action. So there's that part of it too, right? And so the only place that would really want to invade us, and especially after what happened during this chart, would be the British.
Right.
So.
Well, because they're thinking they're taking back something that was theirs and that they invested in and established.
Yeah, because you really can't say the Japanese invaded America. I mean, you can technically say, sure, they did, but that wasn't a state. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, you know.
Do seventh house suns end up having stalkers at all? Like when they check the people out, do those people want to come back really bad?
Usually not.
Okay.
No.
Because do they become friends with their exes?
No.
Oh, well, because we have our special relationship with the British.
Well, that's the most interesting part, is once World War II happened, we had to make alliances with them and the USSR. So we picked communism and monarchy over fascism.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the openness of Jupiter and Cancer there, being like, what aligns with us to get us to where we can feel safe? Who do we have to align with? I don't care if we have no ethical seeing. It comes down to survival Mars. That this is going to be a quick survival moment. Right? And so those are what's weird is, like with the British, for example, that agreement's in alignment, because after that, it's like, okay, we could share intelligence. But obviously something happened after that war, because we took all the German scientists, Operation Paperclip. So if you think about it, this idea of like technology and trying to understand that's the obsession with Uranus in the sixth house. It's like this country has this obsession with like weird technologies. Hence, this is the innovating home of the computer, the innovating home of electricity, the light bulb.
Telephone, was that
Telephone.
here?
Everything came from here. Right? So, you know, like there's no innovation happening anywhere else. It's a copy of our innovation. After actually America was founded, there's not a lot of innovation anywhere else. So, you know, it's because, like, I look at Uranus in the sixth house as like that trine to Saturn in the 10th. Like, we want to be known for that we can figure out problems because we go through hard shit as people here. So when you have a country built with a bunch of people who have to live on their own, the idea of this country wasn't the government to support you except for defense. Not monetarily. If anything, they were never supposed to tax us either. But, you know, the fact that it keeps increasing things that weren't in the original thing, more people come out with innovative shit to try to get around it or make their lives easier.
So I have a question that's a glaring thing that jumps out at me right now is that Neptune is, I mean, it's currently being opposed by Saturn, or it might be over, but it's also very close to where the eclipse is going to be. And Neptune has been opposing that Neptune for a while too. I mean, it's off of that now. So what does it mean that the eclipse is so close to America's natal Neptune?
Well, the buildup of the Civil War was the last Neptune opposition.
Right.
So
And we've talked
where we
about
feel
that.
very divided, and Neptune is a planet of separation and division. Two sides. Right. So the lunar eclipse on here, well, in 2006, it was a financial crisis. So the day of the lunar eclipse was March 3rd, 2006, the last one on that Neptune. And that day, or sorry, the second one, there's another full moon that's going to be lunar eclipse in Virgo next year. So the 2007 one wasn't on that Neptune, but it did. If you look at it, the stock market tanked, and it was the beginning of the Great Recessions, like in many ways. But if we go back to the last time that we could actually have fun with that, right? So here, let's look at the last time that Neptune was in Pisces that we had lunar eclipse in Virgo.
Okay.
Right? So, like the way that we do that, we go, let's do that Neptune in opposition. To Neptune. Let's do it to the radix chart, and let's go back. So it was actually the Neptune oppositions we've been through were in 2021, May 1st, August 21st, 2021, and then March 1st, 2022. That's just the oppositions. And of course, the world felt very divided about what side you're on, especially about freedom and whether you could live the life you want to, or you have to live by the way that people are trying to kind of control how you live in a really weird way. And it was also very divisive, the same way it was during the Civil War. And it was questions about an election, the same like it was as I will go back to, 1859, 2 years before the Civil War. 1858, the year Lincoln lost. But his speech touches people. The Dred Scott case has already just been done in the Supreme Court in 1857. And now the abolitionists start to really ramp up, and the Republican Party starts happening. 1857, that's Dred Scott case right there, Neptune opposite Neptune. So it's funny, right? Neptune opposite Neptune also was, in this round, was the overturning of Roe versus Wade.
Yeah.
About life, life of people.
And did you,
right? Like,
did they have the eclipse at that same degree then too, or no?
Well, I'm going to get to that. I was just let's get to when we're in the Neptune opposition range, and let's see where the North Node was. So North Node in Aries, okay, so in 1857, so we're good. So let's start looking at lunar eclipses, and you know what, I'll do it here, and we'll do eclipses right here. Oh, that's not going to do it. We can do it right here. 1852, 1865. Let's look in that decade. So 1857, let's get to the Virgo. Actually, I could do, but there's solar and lunar, but okay, let's do lunar. Lunar, Virgo, 58. Oh, that's solar, sorry. Solar, is there no lunar? Oh, here, lunar partial, and then Oh, right here. Let's move this as chart 2. And I'll flip it. And then I'll just go to this one. Oh, that was a solar eclipse. I don't know why I just did that. There's this lunar partial. Only one lunar eclipse in Virgo during that other, only one lunar eclipse in Virgo. Here it was right here. Let's do this. So, it was at 9 degrees, Sun in Pisces, North Node, Neptune. We're in now. And it was February 27th of 1858. Of course, it was not Venus retrograde. Nope. It was not Mercury retrograde. That was about to station and stop. So this one's way more rare. It's weird though because it somehow missed having a set of 2 lunar eclipses in Virgo then.
So we're having the first.
We're having the first one, and then we'll have another one next year. What's crazy though is let's look at that history. February 27th, 1858. Because that's the year after the Dred Scott case, Buchanan's president, midterms are about to happen, and Lincoln, it's the year of Lincoln's come up. How
funny, the thing that comes up when I type this in, and this is really interesting. February 11th, 1858, Bernadette Soubrio, a 14-year-old French peasant girl, claimed to have seen the Virgin Mary at the grotto of Massabielle in Lourdes. It's the beginning of the Lourdes apparitions.
Oh, wow.
That's interesting because I was actually thinking, I wonder where, if it was partial here, where would it have been total? Would it be on the other side? Look at I've scalped him. U.S. House of Representatives in the early morning hours of February 6th, 1858. So people were getting scalped. We're going to see that. We saw the cane. Are we getting ready to see someone being scalped in Congress? I hope not.
That's pretty interesting. Go into that a little bit.
But when was this eclipse?
So the eclipse was February 27th, 1858.
Okay, so in the beginning of that month.
Still, we're in that's in that energy.
A fight erupted between South Carolina fire eater Lawrence Kite and Republican abolitionist Galusha Grow of Pennsylvania on the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives. Wisconsin Representative John F. Potter, the Western Hercules, snatched the toupee from atop Mississippi Representative William Barksdale's head, and the House erupted in laughter at the absurdity. "Hooray, boys, I've got his scalp," shouted Potter with perfect rhetorical flourish. So maybe we'll see a toupee come off in Congress.
Or a wig fall off. I have some interesting events that I found here. The Utah War, the Mormon conflicts, tensions escalated between the U.S. government and Mormon settlers in Utah Territory, and President James Buchanan continued to send federal troops to enforce federal authority over Mormon leader Brigham Young and his followers. The Lecompton Constitution controversy, a heated debate continued over the pro-slavery Lecompton Constitution proposed for Kansas Territory. This is all during Bleeding Kansas in that 4 years of 1854 through 58. President Buchanan strongly supported its acceptance, but it faced fierce opposition from abolitionists and anti-slavery politicians. So remember that was Kansas Territory that wanted to be free, but the people that were in the Nebraska had come over and double voted and beat people and killed people in order for the mayor there to go with the election that knowingly was a fraud to make it a slave territory. Minnesota prepares for statehood at that time. That's kind of interesting because it's, well, I'll keep that one to myself. Okay. First apparition of Lourdes, France, international, but influential in the U.S. Bernadette reported her first vision of the Virgin Mary. You said that one. Continuing economic impact of the Panic of 1857. To grapple with the effects of the Panic of a financial crisis characterized by bank failures, unemployment, and economic uncertainty. Well, we've been going through that in the year prior. A lot of bank failures in the last 2 years. Silicon Bank, the unemployment, right? So people are like panicking over it. And then, oh, I was right. Abraham Lincoln's rising prominence. So preparing the stage for his noble Senate campaign debates against Stephen A. Douglas later in that year. And so he's getting himself ready under these eclipses to take a big stand against new territories becoming slaves and slave states. New territories. So I think that's going to be what. Let's just look really quick. Greenland elections. Greenland center-right opposition wins closely watched election. We want to be Greenlanders. Slow Independence Party wins vote, but pro-U.S. party gains. So they want independence from Denmark. So the party that won says, but we don't want to be U.S., but then a bunch of people who want to be U.S. are now higher up in power and second. So it went completely away from the other party, right? So 24% want to, that part of that parliament wants to be with the U.S., and the side that won and wants to be independent from Denmark is 29%. So I feel like this is going to be, we don't want independence tomorrow. We want a good foundation. Denmark ruled Greenland for more than 200 years as a colony before gradually giving it a greater autonomy, including its own. So this Pluto in Aquarius is always about these territories and places where there's, you know, whether it's a country or whether it's a monarch or somebody, like, this is our spot and here you have some autonomy. I mean, this sounds like the American story, right? Like, oh yeah, you can do what you want, but really, when the people are saying we don't want to be with you anymore, so erase the U.S. part of it. But kind of interesting that this is becoming more clear now. In my opinion, that's kind of like a similar situation even with Abraham Lincoln's rise of the idea of like, no, we won't touch the states with slaves, but you can't keep making the new stuff. It's all about new. That's why it's a sad rising chart. It's always about expanding territories.
But it's funny that it's about expanding territories, but the United States has always been reluctant to talk about empire. It never says it's acquiring an empire, but it has economic influence in regions, or we've had CIA influence in other regions trying to determine what the government is, kind of like an undercover influence, or a financial influence that we give people certain economic liberties by, you know, agreeing to certain trade partnerships. And that stuff's all changing right now.
I want to look
right?
at the Oxford Dictionary definition of empire.
Okay.
A group of countries or states that are controlled by one leader or government.
So we already are an empire? Is that what you're saying? We're groups of states controlled by the government, or that we
By
are not?
one leader. There is not one government. There's state governments, there's local jurisdictions. So it can't be defined as an empire. Now, you go and you look up on, the reason why I did that, because you're going to have to use the Oxford for English and to understand true terms. I looked it up on Wikipedia, and what did they turn it into? Like the article is about political and historical terms. For other uses, see empire. Ancient empires, right? There's different versions, but an empire is a political unit made up of several territories, military outposts, and peoples, usually created by conquest and divided between a dominant center and subordinate peripheries. The center of the empire, sometimes referred to as the metropole, has political control over the peripheries. Within an empire, different populations have different sets of rights and are governed differently. The word derives from the Roman Imperium. So I guess you could look at it like the idea of a Roman Empire, because they did try to recreate a Roman Republic.
Right.
So it's like how you look at empire depending on the time periods.
Well, and their definition of empire is it's post-colonial studies, a post-colonial theory. I mean, it looks like some of the books that I had to read in graduate schools. Their description of how they're defining an empire is actually a theoretical perspective on it.
That's why I just went, it sucks that we live in a world where I'm like, can I just go to the Oxford dictionary? And I like it because it's cold, but I like that. It's just, this is the definition.
Okay.
And just keep it there.
So here's an issue that I think America is especially vulnerable to. That is there something about the United States natal chart that means that it isn't good at defining itself? I mean, you did say that it shifts over time, but is it also subjected to people projecting onto it what it means for them? So that we could have, I mean, that we do have in America, it's sort of the idea of every person in their home can define what is America, what it means to me to be an American. So is that in the identity of this chart?
Well, I think it's during the sways of emotions in the world and where people are feeling in comfort. So when America comes to save the day, everybody loves America. Jupiter and Cancer in the 7th. But when they feel like they don't need saving or care, or that care is pulled away from them, that's the better way to look at it, like with this USAID situation, everybody's going to throw a tizzy, like a baby. So America could be a baby, like, you guys are being unfair. That's how we were, right? King George, you're being unfair.
He was being unfair.
I know, but I'm saying, though, there's the act of it looking to others like a baby. Like you're like the British were like, you guys are little babies. We give you all this autonomy. That's what their argument was, right? Like Cancer's always going to show a little bit of a baby somewhere all the time, right? Like, that's unfair, right? But that means on the other side, oh, you're pulling all of our aid that you give us, and you guys are fucked up. You guys are horrible people. So you'll see it on both sides, the projection. And also it's Sag rising, right? So it's the opinion is supposed to sway about the identity of the country. It's never supposed to be just all. The idea that people think that America needs to always stay in this one lane of how it needs to be viewed, it's crazy. Sag ascendant. It's like the opinions of America will go up and down and up and down and up and down. You know, so some people do look at us as the beacon of light in the world, and then the tyrannical place of the world. But really, I think that it's like the lesson of you got to look at yourself first. Like, have you done the basics of define freedoms yet for yourself and country? Like, have you done that? Have you? Because to me, it's like empire is not as bad as monarch. Empire is not as bad as communist. Empire is not as bad as, any totalitarian place.
Yeah. But it's interesting that...
And it doesn't require blood to get the spot, to become the top of the spot. The leader of the free world, or the leader of the country, right? Like the bloodline's what determines the United Kingdom's monarch.
But it's also that it doesn't require blood being spilled, because in some places it would be an emperor takes over because they defeated a bunch of other people,
right,
and made it into that position. So in that way, we have a different type of leader that we all agree on. As siblings, maybe? Is that how we do it because of the moon? Because I was thinking, well, if we're just a bunch of complainers...
Well, I'm saying that when it feels unfair, especially that square to Saturn, Sun square Saturn people, I mean, I have a minor square to it, so I can be like, I am fucking stressed. I've gone through a lot, and I still have to keep doing all this shit. That's the feeling of America. Right? Like, anybody coming here and looking for an easy ride is in for a really hard rude awakening. That's why people like Europe better, because it's granny. You'd give us half of your money, 60% of your money, but we'll take care of your health care, and you don't really get to have a lot, and there's not a lot of innovation here. So you're going to have to buy from China, America, and everywhere else. Their goods, and you're going to have to pay more.
And you're
so
you
don't really get a lot unless you're really old money.
Or you get your basic needs met.
Yes.
But you don't necessarily get special treatment, or...
If you're an American, you're in the 1% of the world of financial, even the poorest American. Isn't that wild?
Yeah. And we're still complaining about everything.
Right. I mean, but that's part of Sag Ascendant. Its opinions will be heard.
But does it
all
have
of the
anything
opinions
to do with the Mercury as well, or no? Does that
I think the ascendant ruler, Jupiter, it's very Jupiter, and it's exalted. So it's going to be heard in every emotion that goes with it. The Mercury is interesting because it's retrograde and it's in Cancer. So there's a letting the opinions out and then going, should I have said that? Let's rethink that again. So, the ideas come out before they're thought. So actually it's more the opinions come out, and then we debate them internally and question them and emotionally. It's also in the 8th house. That's where the secrets that people feel are, is Mercury retrograde and Cancer in the 6th house. So it's kind of like, don't tell grandma, but in the basement is where I keep all the cookies. She's not allowed to have cookies anymore. You know what I mean? Like all of this top secret stuff that we always trip out about. It's kind of like that. Like the people in the know are like, hey, don't tell them, but this is where they are.
Okay, but why is our North Node
in Leo
in the 8th? Like, what does that mean?
I mean, that to inspire others by going through nasty shit, by going through tumultuous times, by having to learn to receive and accept and go through the shadow and come out with the light, to rebirth itself many times over.
That's really interesting. As a history professor, if I think about the types of subjects that people want to write a thesis about, like one of their senior research project, people are really attracted to things like the civil rights movement because they like the stories of people having to stand up for something, and it's chaotic. It's got really bad parts to the story, very difficult, and it's the story of people surviving through that, and then there's a victory at the end, right? It seems like such the American sort of story.
Yeah, but as a astrologer, my question to you as a historian is, why do they associate it with a Democrat win when it was the Republicans who voted for civil rights, and
Well,
it was
they
the
don't always,
and it
if
was
they're
the
researching
Democrats
it.
that were in the House that actually still wanted segregation. And that's the 1964 Civil Rights Act. It was the Republicans in the House and Senate that passed that, and it was just because Johnson was the president that he signed it.
Yeah.
So it was a Republican Civil Rights Act.
Well,
So my question is, why does the country think it was Democrats who did it?
I don't think that they all think that. I mean, and the other thing is that it's an inspiring story that if you've ever had visitors from other countries, right? When they come to the United States, that's one of the things people are really interested in is the story of civil rights. And I mean, because it's one of our modern struggles, and they don't associate it at all with Republican or Democrat. It's
Right.
more of an American experience, right? And so I think, now I also have never had students writing that history and wanting to proclaim it as a victory for the Democrats or Republicans, because also if you're a historian and you're researching something like that, you have to research, some of the very racist things that President Johnson said and how he behaved at the time.
Right.
Right. And that's never something that people want to talk about. So I think it's more of a human triumph story. It's the same reason why it's been depicted in so many films, right? But American stories in any film, it's always, I'm trying to think of I don't know, does Gangs of New York have that aspect? It's been so long since I saw it. It's always the triumphant story of someone who goes against all odds. I mean, Aaron Brockovich, for example, these stories of these people who are, or even Rocky,
Right.
because he's from Philadelphia. He's a good example of this guy who was never supposed to go the distance, and then he does. And it's just
When it was a safe place.
when Philadelphia, I don't think it was that safe in there, was it?
I mean,
at
if
his
you go
time.
to those steps where he's going up and running and his sweats on, and you go there today, there's no water in the fountain anymore.
Yeah, we saw a video
remember,
of
and
that or
there's
something.
crack and homeless people and drugs
Yeah.
everywhere and people being mugged. So yeah, it's not safe to be Rocky anymore in Philadelphia.
Well, maybe Rocky.
And then
is
it's
running
weird,
up
all
steps
the
somewhere else.
election stuff that's happened over all the years of weird stuff has all been based in Philadelphia.
What about the fact that that film Philadelphia, it was called Philadelphia, they set it in Philadelphia, and it was all about the AIDS crisis, and I don't even remember what happened in the film, the Tom Hanks
Oh,
film.
that one about HIV? Yeah, I mean, it's a good movie. I think it's really I think it's a movie that gets people to really kind of get more in touch with what it would have been like to been on the other side of the AIDS epidemic and the HIV crisis in America, and to feel the stories that were not really wanting to be looked at or felt or touched, or many people looked at people that had it like the plague. So they looked at it like leprosy, almost like you have HIV, get away from me. I don't want to get it,
So yeah, it was one of the films that first kind of tried to show a different perspective. But Philadelphia to me has a different type of energy than the United States in general, right?
Well, my question on the civil rights thing, and this is, Johnson, who wanted the bill passed as soon as possible, ensured that it would be quickly considered by the Senate, but normally the bill would have been referred to a Senate, the Judiciary Committee, which was chaired by James O. Easton, a Democrat from Mississippi, whose firm opposition made it seem impossible that the bill would ever reach the Senate floor. The Democrats did everything they can to not have it pass.
Right.
Right? So when the bill came before the full Senate for debate on March 30th, the Southern Bloc, look at that. The country was red. everywhere except the Southern Bloc was all blue, and Democrats all loved segregation.
Including a certain Democrat that was just...
Correct. But 18 Southern Democrat senators and lone Republican John Tower of Texas, so there's one Republican from Texas, led by Richard Russell, launched a filibuster to prevent its passage. We will resist to the bitter end any measure or any movement which would tend to bring about social equality and intermingling and an amalgamation of the races in our southern states. People don't know this history. It blows my mind. Oh yeah, yay, civil rights, and all the Democrats did that. Yeah. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
One Republican, 18 senators that were Democrats, and in 100,
I'm surprised they put... I looked up something once and it talked about Strom Thurmond, who was a Democrat at the time of this, and he was that senator that was like the oldest senator for the longest time. And he would say these things that you would just think, wow, are his views from the Civil War era? He was like an antique in Congress. But when I was reading something about him once, it said Strom Thurmond, who had converted to being a Republican, and that was when it was something, they wanted to say that he did that was bad. But yeah, I like that they actually said he was a Democrat at the time.
Yeah, they thought it was going to bring back the Reconstruction proposals and actions of a radical Republican Congress that wanted freedom for slaves. That was considered radical.
Yeah, and Reconstruction had failed, so it should have been brought back at some point.
Right. Because there were the Civil Rights Acts of the 1875, the Republicans were passing all the Civil Rights Acts forever. And then they were the ones who passed this one. Really.
Okay, so why then do we have, if we go back to the chart of America,
Yep.
This is what I don't get, that it is again this thing of, it's like political parties, that the founders didn't really like the idea of political parties, really. They had them, but they didn't want to have these parties that were fixed, and that it became about the parties
fixed on an ideology that's an
confronting each other.
undefinable America.
Right. But why have we always ended up having, I guess it's the freedom of speech, so we're always going to have that issue, but is there something about
if you think about the sun, the seventh house, that's why we had a civil war, right? We had a divorce. You know what I mean? And also
family counseling that didn't really work.
Yeah, and then if you think of the idea of like what happened with that civil rights, it's like race is Sagittarius, ethnicity is Sagittarius. That's where you get into those things too. So when you try to define the country off a race, it doesn't work. It should be like all races. So you couldn't say all lives matter in 2020, but that's really what everybody felt inside. So what happens is it gets really weird when people are saying, no, this race needs to be, and they're saying it out loud too. This race needs to be, we can't intermingle the races, like the Democrats have always believed. So they always make it about race, and the Democrats for 2024 on Kamala's website, they only represented 72% of the population, but not the other 28%. So, that's where it's more like looking at it as an astrologer, like whenever you see it be about race, it's going to fail. When it's about all races and not picking which one and not saying we need more of that one and more of that one, because it's never been about that.
Is that Saturn in the 10th or
you can mix parts of that, right? Saturn's exalted there in the 10th, and so it's going to not judge based off your race. It's going to be judged based off your character. Maybe MLK was using astrology. But, the judge is off character and following the laws. So this is also a place where the law is very important. right? So America creates laws, and we go around the world trying to also say, hey, this is the way to do it. Sometimes we get backlash, sometimes we don't. But we get looked to as like how laws are drafted and so forth, and how individuals in a country that rule it draft laws, especially corporate laws.
So what about money for the United States?
Well, that's what's so funny, right? This country's always been a debt country, Pluto in the second house. So it came into this country with debt. It's always been in debt. So, and that's what's really weird about Pluto and Capricorn there is like everybody in this country that works is the money of the country. So all the Federal Reserve notes, the backing of it is the workforce. That's why we have all the Federal Reserve banks come out with their non-farm payrolls report, their CPI reports. It's all based off consumers and the consumers that are the workers. Hence, your Social Security number is defined because of your work. So having a Social Security number really should be kind of an option if you want it, not a requirement. If you think about it.
Well, it wasn't.
Right. They've made life terribly difficult to do anything without having one. Your credit report's based off it because of your work. So even if you're a gazillionaire, you don't give a fuck about your credit. You use your business credit and then you just say, I can back up with this much money. Like you don't have to have insurance. You can go down to DMV and if you're like a gazillionaire and just be like, yeah, I can take care of it. I don't need insurance. And then they'll give you a waiver. But so you have to think of that Pluto in the second house as like the way it's not about money. We're obsessed with money here, but it's really about power. And it's about the power of work or utility or what can be the big moving force, whether that's military, right? So where does the money go the most? Military. But actually, it's not military. The real answer is social services now. So Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, all that is 66, 65. Right now, it sways. It's over 60% of all of our funds and our debt go to social services. In Capricorn, that's not going to last long. So really, the death of the country is the death of social services. So everybody thought America was going to end like the fall of Rome. No, it's just pretty basic. Pluto, Capricorn. It's if you would have seen the Constitution be burned or something, like maybe, or if the Declaration of Independence be burned, no, that hasn't happened. It's pretty safe to even try to even attempt that's fucking hard as fuck, right? But to see what the death has been social. So you saw, whenever a death happens, what do? They try to pump you full of anything they got at their last resort. So that's why you saw stimulus, social stimulus, right? Like here's money. It's COVID, blah, 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 blah. And Trump did it and Biden did it, right? And now it's created the crisis to where right now we're going to say no more social services. No more federal government no more. This agency's gone. These employees, they're gone. These people, they're gone because it's going to go very Capricorn. Not about me taking care of you unless you actually really have a position here and you're doing work that has responsibilities that actually are meaningful. So just because you're being a good person and working, like that's the other hard part about Saturn in the 10th and Libra is it's a hardcore judge that's kind of like, well, I know you work, but is your job really relevant? And so we want to take care of people, but it's really about self-care, Cancer. This is a country where it's about you have to learn to take care of yourself. You get as much in as you give and that you can do. You have the freedom to do whatever you want in life. Uranus in the 6th house. and make it however you want. But the more that you follow what everybody else is doing, you live in the cycle that is hard to break out of, that feels like, especially in Gemini, everybody's doing, right? Well, everybody else goes to school, they have a job, they do this, they go to 9 to 5, they drive. When you get caught up in that in America, you just become one of the other people that I'm watching drive by right now. So the people who are innovative and break away really find the most exciting life in America.
Now, what about the role of, so America was created out of a group of people who were British, and then they had this idea of citizens being able to come in from other parts of the world, right? So what does the chart say about welcoming other people, and how do we invite them or bring them into to our community?
Yeah, it's all about just following the laws. So you can always go back to that Saturn the 10th. You can go back to that Sun the 7th house. Like, yeah, we're open. We have open arms, but before we decide we're going to be in this really big union, let's have that square to Saturn and see if you're worth the time and the energy and the work, and you're actually going to follow the laws. That's why there's that 7 years until you can get a citizenship, a Saturn square, right? So there's a lot of Saturn to it. That's the underlying part. Even if you erase like the chart and just look at the planet positions, just the planets, having Saturn in Libra while Pluto was in Capricorn for the declaration, right, gives that dispositing energy of Saturn a lot of energy for Pluto, right? So it's like, as long as, hey, we're fair, just you got to follow the laws, but it's going to have Saturn qualities, meaning 7 years for citizenship. Very Saturn.
Okay, so...
Right, so it's not so much, we don't want people, but you got to follow the laws and come in, right? So a 7th house does not want somebody to just say, I'm coming in and your life. No. I make the decision that you come in.
So then, okay, so...
And then that's where that Mercury in the 8th house can be those that understand how to persuade America, or those that understand how it works and get a little deeper into the surface. And that's where, I'll be honest with you, America is all about people and the ethics of it. And so that's why this country has been always about, like, it has a little bit of a dogma to the way things work, meaning like, whether it's religions, whether it's group associations, right? Not like, that's why the longest stuff have been Masons, have been the religious organizations. Like, it's kind of like who in America as well, Sun in the 7th house and Moon in Gemini in the 3rd, and how to communicate. So like one thing is, if you don't learn the language in America, even though it's freedom of speech, you can speak whatever language you want. It can be kind of hard to pass your citizen test.
Right.
Right? Like,
it's interesting because Trump, didn't he just sign an executive order making English the national language? And
correct.
Our founding fathers had not done that, because at the time when we were founded, German was almost a majority language, I think. So I read about this at some point in my historian career. And so that, the idea was it shouldn't have an official language. I just think that's an interesting reversal.
Yeah, I mean, I who knows how long that'll stand in the future, right? Like America has a lot of things that aren't really put in as amendments or passed in the House, Senate, and with the president's signature. Proper way to pass a bill and legislation don't stick long. And that's why the Roe versus Wade was overturned, because it wasn't an amendment in the Constitution. It wasn't a law that was passed by the House and the Senate and the president. It was just a ruling of the Supreme Court over a case, and people just started to follow that ruling. And that's why I just laughed about the abortion thing, because I'm like, well, this has never been, nobody wants to take the issue up. So if nobody wants to take the issue up in the government, then there's a reason why. Mm-hmm. So it's really not the big issue. And everybody thought it was going to be the big issue, right? Everybody's like, there's no way Trump will win about the abortion thing. It's all about abortion. Nobody fucking voted about abortion. If you look at the results, nobody cares about abortion.
Or they do.
Well, it's very the same time as Neptune. You want to hear a harsh truth historically? These numbers just came out. This is just numbers. In America, you can't be sensitive to numbers with Mars and Gemini and Uranus and Gemini. You have to have a relationship with the truth. 64% of abortions are in the black community in America. Black community is less than a third of the population. So when you have less than a third of the country and over half of them, of the abortions, and all abortions are in that community, and that's the party pushing for that to happen. It's the same party that pushed for them to be slaves and to do all. It's so fucking wild. That's why it wasn't a big jolt in the election, or why there's no amendment about it. But I do see in the future, based off what's happened, that Neptune in Aries, Saturn in Aries, in 2026, 2027, that we are going to see abortion be illegal in America. And it will be an amendment like slavery and the end of slavery. Because this 2026, 2027.
Well, that goes along with the Project 2025 plan ideas.
Oh, it does? I mean, I'm going off the astrology, right?
That,
like using, remember Lincoln said, I'm not going to touch any slave state. And he even made a deal with James Buchanan, the president, and the House and the Senate before he was the president, as president-elect, like, hey, to make the South not secede, make an amendment in the Constitution that slavery can be legal in states that had it prior to this moment, like, you know? And they didn't accept it. So what happened? The 14th Amendment. So like what's happening is not about Project 2025 or something like that. It's much more like the astrology. Mm-hmm. And so the Neptune in Pisces, we don't have Neptune in Pisces. We're in the opposite time of what America's been about since 2011 into 2012. Everything of this weird hypersensitive stuff leaves. America's never been sensitive unless it's always in these Neptune, Pisces, opposite cycles. Neptune and Virgo is very basic, just like this is the way it is. Don't be so sensitive. Get back to work. Shut the fuck up. Have a good time. You're free.
But at the same time, it's
right. That's very
Cancer.
Neptune, right? It's like I'm compassionate to a degree, right? Like not, oh my gosh, we need to do this, and oh my god, right? So when Neptune leaves Pisces and it's fully in Aries and Saturn with it, it's all those things that happened over the last 15 years of Neptune will be over, and it will be like it was when Neptune came into Aries. It became about, we're setting the amendment of no more slavery. And so the same way that Trump said, I'm not going to nationally take away your abortions. Hasn't even brought abortion up. Mm-hmm. So everybody said he's going to bring that up. The second the Democrats start saying he's going to do something when he's not, that's when it's going to all turn. There's going to be some sort of civil issue. There's going to be some crazy stuff. And the next thing you know, whether it's J.D. Vance or it's him, they're going to find a way, and the Republicans will have the place. Interesting. Because the question about life as human beings come up in Aries. Like, what is the definition of things? And that's where Chiron is. So Chiron's trying to heal broken things that are really fucked up. Like, it tried to protect slavery. It tried to protect civil rights against people, like actually having civil rights for just one race. Never works. And it becomes about life, because life is where the sun exalts itself, and the sun exalts itself in Aries. So when Neptune and Saturn come in there, last time they met at 0 degrees, of course, was back in the 4000s BCE, so 6,000 years ago. So that's the beginning of the Babylonian Empire. So, you think they accepted abortions back then? It was really intense, like the laws that became of the Babylonian Empire. So we're coming into Babylon, a reset, and it's not going to allow that shit. I'm the guy that says it years before it happens, but following the Lincoln situation, hey, I'm not going to touch it. And then the Democrats say, no, you're going to touch it. And then they do crazy shit. And then everybody, the country doesn't want it anymore. No more slavery. Fuck that. Really, abortion, slavery, especially what's happening right now. Like there was just the hearing, and I just talked about it last week, but the new NIH secretary that they're going to get is to get rid of all the aborted baby fetus parts in vaccines and vaccine research, right? That's been going on since 1971. So the system that buys all the aborted fetus parts is dying. So do you think they're going to be pushing abortion anymore? Who's going to buy the aborted baby fetuses now?
I don't know.
So the Democrats were part of a slave industry. But they were of dead slaves, the slaves of aborted fetuses. That's why they pushed it so hard. You know how many aborted babies are a year? And how many there been in the decades?
Oh, I can't imagine.
More than World War II deaths, more than, you know. And do you think all of it just ends up in the trash? So that's what just came to an end but there's going to be a big little last fight for the rights to buy aborted baby fetus parts. And that's really going to be the kind of weird war we're going to see, especially like for stem cell research or Hydra research that they're doing at UC Davis. They want all that stuff.
Okay, but what is it about the United States? Here's what I was thinking. If you think of this chart, let's say it's your mother. What type of mom is this? Like, so I'm just thinking.
It's like Lady Liberty. She's strong. She's open, but you try to undercut that or do some weird immoral shit. Fuck you. I'm gonna come down on you with a bunch of people that are with me in this country about freedom. And you fuck with our friends and go the extra mile, then we'll show up. That's a lot for us to move all of our heavy equipment everywhere. Cancer.
We have to take our shell.
Right? And how have we always done it? Setting up the military is like a fucking house, right? Like when we show up, it's like, okay, everybody, we've got barracks. We've got tanks. We've got fucking Humvees. We've got fucking Blackhawks. We got all of our ships posted up, our subs. Like, you know, everybody in Vietnam's got their cigarettes. They've got their fucking toilet paper in the middle of the jungles of Vietnam, sitting and smoking a Marlboro Red on a fucking toilet seat with straw bamboo that they fucking put up. They had better bathrooms than the fucking people who lived in the Viet Cong.
So we bring our steamer trunks along.
So when we go, it's like, oh God, they're not wanting to go because it's the moral thing. It's really like, are we really energetically willing to put all that equipment over there? Okay, I guess so. There's got to be an incentive.
So that's why we need to have bases all around the world, too, right? Or
I mean, that's kind of because of NATO.
Are all of
right?
them,
So like
though?
NATO and part of the agreements, and that's what's coming up with this whole Trump thing right now. Is like the idea was, well, look at America and look what it did for us in World War II, and look at them. They created the A bomb, and look at what they did. They were able to get all these people to. They didn't have to do everybody volunteered. They did do a draft, but they did it where they're not forcing people. If you don't do it, you know, you might have to go to jail, but you're not going to be killed or you're not going to be thrown in a van. Right? And they got everybody to come out here and fight for us and go through the fields and free us and do all this shit. And they have the ability to do it. And they were able to get the fucking Japanese. It wasn't so much about Hitler because that was with our three allies. The three allies didn't help us to stop Japan. right? Because really it's China who needed the help, right? Japan invaded China first, and then they invaded Indonesia, and then they invaded all those areas, right? So really it's like Holland got invaded by by the Germans, right? So, oh, we lost the Indonesian. Oh, we're losing all of our fucking territories, but we can't do anything about it because Hitler's ruling us now. So, really, the Americans then go and defeat Japan and the empire, and that's what makes us. And the NATO treaties that come out of that, like, well, it'd be nice to have Americans all over the place. You have to remember, these countries agree for us to be there. It's not like we said, we're in Germany, motherfucker. Sit down and shut the fuck up. We were asked and allowed, and they continue to allow it. So you can't say, well, back then, maybe they did push them around. No, any prime minister or any head of the state or government in any country where we're at agrees. And actually, the funniest place where we have our ops, our black ops, the secret ops, are in the Philippines. Right? So we have to work with Duarte there, who's like against drugs and all this kind, and he's really intense and he kills people on the streets. But that's where we run a bunch of our black ops, and we have like a bunch of black op bases there, but it's like a deal like you can do whatever you want with your fucking people and drugs, but let us have a base. So people just get all these conceptions like off. It's really sad because I call it like clown land. Like the puppets on the media are really not talking history. They just say the sound bites that people want to hear, and it's all ending with Neptune and Pisces. Like all the same way they propagated the Civil War and they propagated slavery to be a good thing, ends with Neptune and Aries. And you're seeing it right now. Like you're seeing the whole media just like. You're even seeing Gavin Newsom in our state being like, yeah, it's unfair for trans men to be in women's sports. Wait, and then they fucking try to tear him up about that. Right? So it's already, the Neptune and Pisces end, you're feeling it right now. And that's why it feels like it's on edge. And so the country feels on edge when Neptune ends Pisces because it's our opposite Neptune. Neptune in Virgo is very like, you know, I'm only compassionate to a degree. When things that aren't working, that should work, that really matter, that keep the place humming good, that's when I'm the most compassionate. But when you're starting going in all these extra places, I don't care. And so that's what's happened is the country started to care about all these places that are way too far, Neptune and Pisces, and just so far out that it doesn't relate with anybody in their day-to-day life, Virgo. So this is also the full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo with Neptune there. That's like, no more, we're done. No more. It's back to like, we need to focus on the basic shit, the day-to-day life, and I don't give a fuck about your pronouns, and I don't give a hell about your religious, like wanting it to be seen more if I want to go to the right or something like that. You know what I mean? Like get back to the basic shit.
So then is it the fact that Neptune's in the third house? Does that have anything to do with the way it plays out?
I mean,
right now?
like, well, I mean, it's been, if you want to use that, I mean, we have Virgo and Pisces intercepted.
Oh.
So that's why Neptune even more so has a problem here.
Oh, okay.
Right? Neptune's the ruler of Pisces. So our Neptune can't go and say, oh yeah, we're ruled by the traditional fourth house of Sag. There is no Pisces fourth house definition of the sign to rule over that house, right? So that's the problem is when you see eclipses in these zones, or if you're born with like, in this case, a lunar moon or Neptune, the ruler of one of the signs that's intercepted, that's going to be the planet to always watch for in America that really gets weird is Neptune. So you can like look at the Neptune square Neptune, right? So that would have been when Neptune was in Sagittarius at the end of the 70s. And the country felt the same way it does now, kind of like Jimmy Carter was not exactly a fun president. And all the issues that he tried and putting a solar panel in the fucking White House and shit while everybody was fucking poor and stoned. It was like, I don't give a fuck about that. So it's so weird that hippies didn't care about the solar panels on the fucking White House.
Probably some of them did.
No, they really didn't. They didn't care. All they cared about was like, can we get gas? It's fucking an odd day and I'm an even fucking number and my fucking joint is burning a hole in my fucking pants.
My bell bottoms, you mean?
Right, exactly. Yeah. So like, that's one way to look at it too, is like when the issues become so disconnected to the reality of just things.
But is that always going to be our problem if we have Virgo and Pisces intercepted? Is that always
correct?
The issue?
Yeah. I mean, that's why, you can do whole sign in your head, but so traditionally, yeah, it's fourth house if you use whole sign. So Neptune's been confused on what its emotional lines that it's trying to understand are spiritually, ethically right in a way.
But even then, I mean, it seems like a lot of the issues that you've been bringing up too. So if we think about slavery, if you think about abortion, those things have the moral argument as well. So
but they all fail. They all fail. Because the Mercury is retrograde in the 8th and Mercury is the ruler of Virgo intercepted. So that underneath, the people pushing it don't believe in it themselves. That's where I say Scorpio doesn't reveal what it really ever does. So it's like that. So the country looks like we care about DEI. No, it doesn't. It knows that it's fucking bullshit, but it's making money in the moment.
So the country,
it's a good investment right now.
So if we think about who controls the country. So if it's about Pluto, I mean, if Pluto's in our second and there's a big issue about power, who is controlling our country? The people are supposed to be, but if the moon is in that difficult place, it's
the money that controls the country. So the Pluto is ruling the 12th house. That's why it's Sag ascendant. So that's why people with this idea of Scorpio ascendant, you're going to put Libra as the ruler. So that means Venus would be the ruler of the hidden things. And Venus in Cancer, caring people are behind the scenes. No. Sounds like Pluto and Capricorn, people that want control through money and power and secret society, like aspects, secret societies or Pluto or secret places. And in the house of secrets, right, the ruler of that. And it's based off money. And so monies rule elections, monies rule over politics. Money, I mean, especially even more so, you got to look at it in different places because, when the Articles of Confederation were around, like, there really was no centralized money that was working. The continental money was shit. So when the Constitution comes, okay, we got a little bit of federal, and then that's where the idea of parties start to come because money starts floating around. Remember when we were doing, what's his name? Aaron Burr. What was his number one problem coming into the vice presidency and all that stuff? He took out loans for his businesses. Remember that? He was in a lot of debt. And then it was the question of, are you dealing with international bankers? What's going on with you? Scorpio.
But is that a problem for the United States?
But he was also the main figure tried with treason. Right? So that's what's so weird about this time is like, there's a bunch of Aaron Burrs walking around, but nobody's saying anything.
No.
So that's when it's got more power and sway than normal.
So what's going to happen when Pluto hits the south node?
Oh, that's honestly, if anything, that's just a relief.
Will it expose the Aaron Burrs?
So think about this. So like Pluto was at 27 degrees Capricorn, Declaration of Independence, 1776, right? When Pluto hit 6 degrees, the war came to its end. And it was like a huge relief of like, God, I don't have to figure out this stupid shit and all these other people, Aquarius. And that's the thing. People think, Cancer's caretaking, but it's about caretaking yourself or your internal little family, right? Aquarius is like, I want to go help everybody. That's America's problem. Right. So North Node in Leo is focus on your own happiness first. So why did Reagan use Make America Great Again and it worked? Why did Trump use it and it worked? Why are Americans like, I don't give a fuck about aid to other countries? Because it's North Node in Leo. It's Sun and Cancer. Those are the two signs that rule the sun and the moon. You think the sun and the moon care about the planets? They got to back up however far they want to.
Interesting.
So the country is not based off helping others. That's the illusion, though. And Pluto brings the truth bomb of like, well, sorry to tell you, but no, that doesn't really work out for you guys too well, especially with money. You don't have the money to do it. So that's why we didn't go help France either. It was like, we just won. We just lost a bunch of people. We gotta sell all these fucking loyalist places and make some money and figure out what to do next. And we're going to spend the next decade to figure out a constitution.
But if we are moon in Aquarius, and it's in the third house?
Yeah.
So that's very airy. What are we passionate about then? Or where is our heart? Or what would you say about the moon?
Our heart's when it comes into something that breaks the illusion and it's not illusionary. Like, oh my God, World War II is actually happening and they just bombed us at Pearl Harbor.
So then we get ourselves.
Then it's like, yeah, the country didn't want to go to war. The polls in 1940 was like 70% of the country was like, stay neutral, don't go into this world war. But in 1941, December 7th, right in 1942, as it begun, every man signed up.
So when we need to be there, we will be there.
Do you remember that it was actually, and I mean, a lot of movies do this, but it was just known because if you looked in a women's magazine, there was no men to like use as ads. The cigarette ads were every woman smoking and like, your man's home, you better have the best night of your life and give him the best love of your life, right? Like, because you're not going to see him for a long time. So if you were a man, elderly, and you look at the ads that were for men, it was literally for old men to go fishing and help protect your son's wife, like help her at the home if she needs, so it was embarrassing to be a man and be elderly in America during the World War II. And if you were a woman sitting around not doing anything too, like you could be a housewife, but down the street, you could probably take a couple days and bring your kids with your neighbor's kids and go put some shells together. So
maybe you would.
That's what the illusion, when the illusion's broken of the help that's not truly needed and real help needs to show up, and it brings that Leo energy in of we need to go lead and we need to go fucking badass motherfucker. That's when we come together.
Interesting.
And it's easy to communicate. Everybody feels the same thing at the same time. That's moon in the third in Aquarius. Like I feel, but I don't even need to tell you. We already. I'm saying the line before you, and you're saying the line before me.
See, that's what I think. That's always what I feel is the American spirit. If you can say anything, if that's how you would say it, and I feel like that's been disrupted, or there's been an effort to try to disrupt that aspect of America. In that when something traumatic happens, or if there's something that happens that is an obvious injustice and we all see it, that's where the media is supposed to play that role of connecting us. And if you have the media against creating a common narrative, it really throws a wrench into the way that we work. Because when we see what other people are going through, whether it's the rest of the world or whatever, nobody has to worry because we are there. And I don't know if it's in an Aquarian way where we're not going to do it to waste our resources, or we shouldn't be doing it in a way that wastes our resources, because if we're wasting it away, we're not saving the water jug or whatever, like the Aquarian. We need to have it for the real situations, but it all works together. To me, it's really interesting to think about the fact that our Mars, Venus, and Mercury are all in Cancer. So that should mean that
Mars and Gemini.
Oh, is it? Okay.
So here's what I'm going to tell you is What if I were to tell you that everything that's happened has been a plan in order to get us back to that way, that they're doing it inverse of the way they've done it before?
Okay, why would you say that?
Because
What is
the
it?
way the lies that were told about like Washington, like and made him look way bigger than it was to get like the paintings of him and stuff, was to get people to be like, yeah, let's join the fucking rebels. And so the way that you would think about it is with the biggest plan, Pluto. We had never seen a Pluto, Saturn, and Capricorn since the Declaration of Independence, right? So it happened in 2020, but it was built up in 2018 through 2019. So the ideas of like making the media look like they're against the people turns everybody to this moment in 2024, Pluto and Aquarius now, to be like, okay, we know they're all after all of us. To vote Trump in, okay, and then whatever comes next, starting in the next weeks, is going to be the thing that starts to bring us all together in this crazy way. And it's going to be like, because it was all based on making people like look at the same thing for so long and get them to feel like this is happening to us without having to stage events as much as make up events on a television. That's the Neptune part of the media part in Pisces. So it's all been orchestrated and planned.
So it's been meant to look so ridiculous.
Correct, on purpose, because there's no explanation for it, and the only place you can go is plan. Especially with Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter, all 2020 happening in the second house. It was all planned. And it was all planned of a motive with Pluto there to do something to get the country back to its roots, per se.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that you used the term roots in the title for this, right?
Oh, right.
The deep roots.
I didn't actually
then-
put that on the title
Oh, you
eventually. I
didn't?
changed it. Yeah,
Oh, okay. So that was a working title. But it's so interesting that it has all that Cancer energy, because I think of roots in that. And also, though, I think the North Node in Leo makes me think of the ancestry aspect of it too. So we came from a situation in which blood was what determined your ancestry or what was going to be your role. But then to have
it still
North
does. Every
Node in
president has the same bloodline.
it, yeah, but also
Unless you're Joseph Robin and Biden Jr. This is Irish and not connected.
The Irish have an interesting role too. I think it's interesting that the Irish.
Well, I
Prime
mean, it's
Minister
coming
was
out
this
that
year.
it was Otto Penn, his pregnancy, his presidency, right? So, was he actually writing those executive orders? So that's going to get brought up to the Supreme Court. That's all been just finally figured out, that he's the first president to use Otto Penn on every single thing except one letter, which was the one of him dropping out of the race. He's the first. So that's why you see Trump signing with ink every single executive order, because they're going to go to court with that you never saw that with Biden, and they used Otto Penn.
Wow, interesting.
And then it was like, the Otto Pen was only supposed to be used for when a president's like out of the country or far away, and it's legal to use in that case, but not to be used by his staff for whatever they want.
So if this is what happens, and they start to turn the light or shed light on maybe his administrators or his ministers, whoever was working for Biden. It's the same transit that we were looking at with Henry VIII. And there was something else too, where people start to blame the ministers, right?
Correct.
Where they start to say, well, it wouldn't be the president who did this or the leader, it was the people advising him. And they did the same thing with George III too.
So they finally just got one of Trump's lawyers in the fake White House that was used throughout the
where
Biden
is
presidency. It's across the street from the White House.
Wow.
And that's the stage that he used, remember, for the vaccine and for many things. There's the teleprompter. That just came out yesterday.
Huh. What else is there? Is there
The Otto
a
Pen.
diaper changing facility?
Oh, the Otto Pen. The Otto Pen is probably one of the most wildest things you'll ever see in your life. That the whole presidency was signed by Otto Pen. So that's the difference. I believe today what I always had, that America, we can do it together. This is with him dropping out of the race. The one above is used in every single one, and it was auto pen.
Wow. And that just came out.
Like the last 5 days. And now there's cases being used. Like here, yeah. Auto pen.
Wow.
You can't touch the ink.
Okay, but is having a secret studio then, a secret fake White House, is the U.S. supposed to have a leader like that if we do have North Node and Leo in the 8th house?
No, you can't act fake things.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Like you can't, like Leo has to be authentic, right? Like we knew it was fake. But people who fell for it were easily in the Aquarius place. Well, I gotta go get a vaccine because he's telling me in this fake White House right now to fucking get it, and that's gonna help other people. And that was the illusion. It didn't help. It caused more harm.
But it's always not an illusion. It's a matter of people believing it too. So is that the aspect?
So
of
the Leo
Jupiter,
North Node is
or?
like, well, you want to be in a place of authority, you should sign the motherfucking thing with your pen, not have staffers who we don't know if Biden even knew what was being signed, because now it's been said by how many people? There was the 50 people that came out to the New York Times, right, saying Biden was a cognitive, he didn't even know what was happening, right? Now it was saying that it was run by everybody in the donors, right, that have come out and spent the $1 billion, that said that motherfucker wasn't doing anything and didn't even know. And it was the staffers running and creating these orders and using auto pen. They're the ones who got this out. Democrats got this out.
That's going to be an important issue for everything. I was actually just looking at a document today that I was supposed to sign, like a purchase order.
Right.
And I looked at everybody's signature on it, and it all looks the same.
It's all auto
because
pen.
everybody's choosing the.
So who's
that.
to know if the person actually signed it, meaning like his wife could have, or somebody else? Like, when you see in this Zoom world that was created by COVID, that's why Trump's asked for everybody to be back in the office and to use pens and to use, like, it's little stuff like that.
So are we as Americans supposed to be more face-to-face? So we do have Uranus in the 6th. So having an innovative work life should be something.
Yeah, I mean, I said earlier that Uranus in the 6th reminds me of like the smartest people break out of the cycle.
Okay.
Meaning the herd. Uranus in the 6th is like a herd to me. That just, we all go exactly where everyone else is going.
Wait,
right? So only if you look at it, Gemini, only smart people know how to break the herd and rebel against. Everybody's doing school. Everybody's going the path like that. It reminds me of the Y that Pythagoras used, and that it's weird because that is the male chromosome and then the X, but it's weird because it's the Y that's used in the split in your life by your Saturn return that John Dee helps in English, but he wrote it in Latin, but English-speaking people to fully understand that by your Saturn return, you better go your own path, not where everybody else is going. And you'll find philosophy, you'll find spirituality, you'll find the eternal, or you'll end up in anxiety and hell, basically. So if you think about it, people who just keep following the same, and it becomes too hard the older you get to actually let go. Not saying you can't, but it becomes harder. That's the whole thing. It's the vice, as he calls it, the vices of, but if I lose my job, if I lose my Social Security, if I lose this and I can't go break, that's so Uranus in the 6th. Like, I can't break away from the herd. That's not smart. No, it's actually the smarter thing to do because the herd's not happy.
Mm-hmm.
And the herd, Uranus, is the dispositor to Aquarius, right? And the South Node and the Moon are there. The illusion of that the herd's happy and that it's doing the smart. What's the smart way to live life? It's not the smart way to live life in America. Like presidents aren't 9-to-5ers. Tell me of a 9-to-5. That's why it didn't work when Kamala was like, I worked at McDonald's, and McDonald's came out and was like, no, we don't have records of her working at McDonald's. Nobody believed it. because there's never been a 9-to-5 president.
Meaning that
Like that,
instead they're
that
like
lived and
8
worked in
till
the
8.
herd,
I
lived
mean,
and worked in the herd.
Yeah, because they work.
Right. So this is actually a crazy historical thing. Why in 1944 in that election did they change out the vice president to become who?
I don't remember. I mean, I wasn't alive, obviously, but I don't know.
Right?
Oh,
Truman. Truman comes in and gets into becoming on the 4th nomination of FDR. There's a contention at the DNC over the vice president, not the president who's in a wheelchair who's about to die. He dies a year later. Because the vice president that was vice president was a farmer. And that's what kept the vote, was because he was a farmer, and that's what kept the vote going. But they knew in World War II that they had the atom bomb already going. We know that now, that Mockingbird was going on, that in 1944 there was all this stuff, and they're getting ready to drop that thing, and there's a lot of pressure. And so you have to, no president that's a 9-to-5 worker has ever been president. Look that one up, it'll blow your mind. They're always in politics or business, or where they own the business, or they're at this high up position in life, not the common person. Uranus in the 6 is the common person. So it's weird. The common person is what you have to learn to break away from in America, because that's actually the trap with Pluto and Capricorn. And dispositing over to Uranus, or if you just use dispositorship, Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius, and that's where the moon and the south node are. So it's very uncomfortable to just live the day-to-day mundane life. Then you have Neptune and Virgo in the chart. So that's the illusion as well. And that's where the humdrum, people aren't happy. And that's why the social services won't work. It was a nice experiment. But
is the eclipse happening it'll be in the intercepted part of the chart?
Yep. And it will be on top of that Neptune.
So
the end of this whole week, I care about your small little feelings that are really off the normal things of just any person, rich, poor, famous, not famous, whatever. Don't give a fuck. We're done. This is the lunar eclipse that ends it all. It's already over. I mean, they're boycotting Target now. So
Target went from this real, I think wasn't the other side boycotting Target for a while?
yeah, but then Target just dropped its DEI, and then so the left just said boycott Target for 40 days, and then they used, ironically, Lent as the example. But it's so crazy because now I've gotten more Target, 25% off.
Oh, that's good.
Like on the app, the Target app or whatever, you know what I mean? Like Target is like, we're back. No more tucking your dick in girls' outfits anymore. Right? Like that's like, so especially that's what's kind of weird is like when society in America goes that it's trying to force society to be a certain way. A good example would be the 1920s with the Uranus in Aries and Pluto in Cancer square. Everybody was like, get stocks. So the roaring 20s is about everybody needs to have a stock. And then the stock market goes into the greatest crash of all time. So what you're seeing with the DEI is the stock market crash of a societal norm that won't recover.
Well, okay, I have another question. I know we probably need to
that's what's crazy about the whole like switchover was, right? So if you go to FDR and they look at, you know, who he served with, right? When you go to being president, right? Okay, he has such a big, remember, this guy got 4 presidential terms, right?
I really wonder what people thought at that time. I mean, of just talk about suddenly feeling
Like,
you're in a monarchy.
Don't forget that in 33, right, when the banks crash is under his first term. And then we shut down the banks for weeks, right? And then the Federal Reserve takes power and he takes everybody's gold away. And what does he create? Social services, Social Security, all these things. Like people, the more they keep fighting for Social Security, they're never going to end the Fed. It's tied. The worst president that ever lived, by the way, FDR. So he took us on the path of where it's been so hard to get off of. And he was in for 4 terms, even when he was dying. Right? And guess who's Biden's favorite president was, who he had over the mantle at the fake White House? FDR. He was trying to be FDR too. Okay, so right here. Roosevelt made clear before the convention that he was seeking another term. And on the lone presidential ballot of the convention, Roosevelt won the vast majority of the delegates, although a minority of Southern Democrats voted for Harry F. Byrd. Party leaders prevailed upon Roosevelt to drop Vice President Wallace from the ticket, believing him to be an electoral liability and a poor potential successor in case of Roosevelt's death, because they know that the bomb is coming. So the Senator, Harry S. Truman of Missouri, who had earned renown for his investigation of war production inefficiency, was acceptable to the various factions of the party, right? So when you look at Vice President Wallace, Henry Agard Wallace, he was young too. It kind of doesn't make sense. And he was a progressive, but look at, he was the Secretary of Agriculture before he was in, right? So you have to remember, like, they didn't want a farmer for the war. Everybody's at the war. You don't want the 9-to-5 guy being president ever. Never will happen. America will never have a Saturn in the 10th house, a 9-to-5er.
So you're saying it was Kamala's mistake to say she worked
Correct.
at
If she would have never said that, there's a lot of mistakes she made, but the biggest mistake was doing the McDonald's thing, because then when the psychology of it was when Trump went to McDonald's, that is what blows people's minds, because Trump should not be at McDonald's. But he went and did it. Because people are never going to vote for a 9-to-5er subconsciously. Because they know all their life is when am I off work?
That's really interesting.
This is like really deep shit I don't talk about, but yeah. Whenever I look at America's chart, I always look at the herd like, like.
Okay, so what about this? If we look at our solar return chart, would you look at that, or is
Oh
that
yeah,
even important?
I can look at that. I mean,
So what kind of year are we having right now?
oh, right now, well, I think I showed that one time that we're in the progressed moon in Aries now. Finally, Trump's win was the progressed moon in Aries shift, so that's why you're seeing no more of that weird Pisces shit. Let's wake up. But
do you ever look at the solar return for see what year we are having, or?
Yeah, I like solar returns.
Okay.
I mean, I don't put my whole life on them, but they give, like, you know, it's like pulling a tarot card.
Okay.
Unless it's a serious return of the solar timing, meaning the solar return chart looks a lot like your natal chart. Then you're back at where we have a discrepancy in the timing of having a horrible Gregorian calendar system. Meaning that your birthday could be a day off, it could be a day late, it could be 7, you know, it's usually many hours off. So when people are like, yeah, you were born at this time, it's your birthday. Like, as an astrologer, I'm always like, actually, it was like 8 hours ago.
Well, it really matters for you too, because sometimes your day might be a Cancer day, right? I mean, because you're
No, it always will be
you're always
55
0°,
Leo.
but if you just So if you just go to the 23rd.
Like there's been some times where July 23rd, most of the day is Cancer, and I'm like, tomorrow will be my day.
Yeah.
Or it's the opposite. It's like July 22nd is Leo, and so we'll do the solar. Return to natal. So you want the current, and then you want the nearest. This is the current one. And it's very close. So the timing, because we were in a leap year last year, right? So we were correcting the time. So look at the sun in the 8th house, Venus, the moon at 29, Gemini. Look, this is a pretty crazy chart, actually. This is 2024 into 2025. So until July 4th of this year. Scorpio ascendant. So that's Pluto in the 3rd retrograde. But the main thing is you always look at the sun first. So the sun's in the 8th house and it's 9th house ruled, meaning that rules over the 9th house. So it's kind of coming out of the ashes positively.
Wait a second. Can you say that again? What
So
does
I'll
that
show
mean
you.
by saying the 9th house
So,
ruled?
so the sun is the solar return. The number one planet's the sun. Stop looking at everything else first, right? It's going to be at its original degree. But in this case, it's on the 7th house like it was in the natal chart of the declaration, right? It's in the 8th house. Or whatever you want to use. I mean, that's where it gets a little dicey is using a chart like this, and people have discrepancies all the time. But, I mean, astro.com puts it as this time, so I go off that. There's also another one that they use, but I like this. This is the one that's been used the longest. And Joan Quigley used this chart, too. The astrologer for Reagan that saved his whole life for the rest of his presidency. Yeah. And got the Supreme Court justices correct and everything like that. So Cancer is the 9th house.
Okay.
So when the sun, I'm sorry. I was thinking of the moon being there. It's the 10th house. So the sun is Leo, the ruler of Leo. So it's midheaven, and the moon is in the 9th. So it's like, all this energy in the 8th house is going towards this moment where we feel we're on top of things and there's some movement forward out of the darkness. I was subconsciously like looking at the moon there because I was thinking about the Neptune square to the moon. So the country's emotions are not solid at all. Like we're feeling every feeling and uncomfort and all over the place and unsure about everything. Right? So it's also a balsamic moon. So it was right before a new moon. So that's hard because it's like this new beginning that doesn't feel like it's fully new. So, it's an odd chart, I would say. And then you could slice and dice that however long you want. I don't get too lost into it unless I see something like overwhelming, right? But we'll do it again for 2025. That'll be interesting. So the next one. So sun in the 6th house, and it's Leo is the 7th house. So, Mercury right there, and it's an Aquarius ascendant with Pluto in the 12th. So the sun will have just set. I think that's a little bit better. The moon's up high in a night chart. And what sucks is like all those other planets like Mars, Saturn and stuff are in the night chart, not seen. So it's really going to be, except that Mars is actually in a night chart up in the day, and it's technically in the 7th. I mean, depending on what house system you use, that could be, I mean, I look at it as positive. Mars likes to be up in a night chart scene. But there's definitely going to be some big negotiations, and life's going to feel a lot more put together, but it's going to be about what alliances we make, and those are going to be, I think, rattling to a lot of people, that's been my prediction for a long time, right? I said the alliances are going to change the last 5-6 years, because it'll be Uranus and Oh, look at that. We're getting Uranus and Taurus at 29. So this is a unique solar return chart because it's not going to be Uranus Gemini till 2026's solar return. And we have Uranus Gemini. So it's like literally 3 days before Uranus goes into Gemini. And it's got Venus conjunct it, right? So Venus-Uranus conjunction in the 4th house with Mercury on the ascendant. Or descendant, sorry, and it's in the 7th house, and the sun is the ruler of the 7th house. And that Mercury is going to go retrograde in that house. Mercury will be already slowing down there, yeah. So it's going to be all about the new wild alliances we make and the ones that we don't make.
Wow.
And it's Aquarius ascendant. And it's Scorpio moon up in the 9th house at the top of the chart, though. That's going to be where it almost feels like it's kind of going dark, but it's more of a emotional projection than reality. I think what it is the starving last emotions of like, I want it, whatever we've been used to in common life, 6th house, that's made us feel comfortable. There's Jupiter back with the sun, but Jupiter in the 5th. People are going to have to find happiness in letting go of what has been the way that always felt safe, of the way that America was. It's going to be a completely different way and kind of going back to roots of what independence feels like, which I don't think people are ready for. So the people that complain the most about what's happening, the gutting of services, the government, all that stuff, that's happening whether you like it or not in the astrology moving forward. And this chart is the beginnings of that being felt more. So we're not going to really feel it as much until this chart kind of kicks in July. Especially when Uranus goes into Gemini.
So if you have a solar return where Uranus is at the 29th degree of Taurus, but it goes into Gemini, are we going to feel like, well, we should be seeing something different, but why aren't things changing, or what's that going to be like?
Well, good thing the sun and the moon aren't in the balsamic phase like the one we're in now. Mm-hmm. But I think what's weird is if I really think about this a little deeper, that Venus-Uranus to me is also what happened the last time after FDR came in and did all these social services and Social Security, and we went into World War II with Uranus right when it went into Gemini. What happened? You know, what's the financial thing that happened?
That we recovered? I mean, we started to recover from the Depression, right? Or
opposite. We were at the highest level of debt the country's ever been in before in our lives. Right. So, and we pulled the war off with the craziest debt of all time. And then we looted. Why do you think we went after the Nazis first? We stole all their people. So the worst people on the planet, we stole them. And we looted all the coffins, all the coffers, and we got there before the USSR did. That's why we made the atom bomb first, because we got the people first. We found all the right stuff first. Because we came from the West. That's why East Germany and the wall, the Berlin Wall, and the USSR, right? The East was not the nice part. So the USSR also didn't have smart people up in the front to jack all the nice shit that was stolen, that Hitler stole.
They were also struggling along because they had taken such a brunt from the
They had, but at least when they were heading towards Germany, they were more determined than just as much as the Americans were. But the Americans had a full-blown operation and plan of taking everything they got. That was the order. That was because we needed money. All the gold, all of it. So like the USSR was pissed. Plus we stole the right scientists. We had von Braun. So we had the V2 rocket guy. So if we think about it, that's where America's going to hit its peak debt, but find a way to do it in a new way. Because that's a similar, we're running into the similar solar returns of 1940 and 41. I don't even need to re-pull that up, but I could. Watch this. I'll just do it for fucking. It'll be like, wait, what? How did you know that? I'll be like, yeah. do 1941. Uranus at the end of Taurus there, ready to come into Gemini that year. Right? So that's what I mean. Like Neptune at the end of a sign with North Node. How weird is that? And we're now Neptune, North Node.
Wow.
But like, you know, like this is stuff you should do in your head.
Well, I'm trying to get there.
I'm not talking to you, I was talking to the audience. Like, it's pretty easy. But
Look at that. What's the big trine that they're showing? What is that? Moon?
the grand trine at the moon in Pisces to that Mars, or sorry, in Sag, sorry, to the Venus-Pluto conjunction. That's what's crazier. So that's a Venus-Pluto-Chiron conjunction. So the year that we enter into World War II is Venus-Pluto-Chiron conjunction, trine Mars, right? And then Uranus at the edge of Taurus going into fucking Gemini. You start to see the, like, we're going to have a Venus-Uranus conjunction. There's something about that Venus that's going to play out something interesting if you just want to, like, have fun with it. But again, it's solar, so that's Sun 9th house with Scorpio ascendant, which is the exact same style of chart we're in right now. Solar return wise. That I just showed prior. Scorpio ascendant, Sun 8th, 9th house right there. There's 8th house, but
Do you pay attention
is that like, you know what I mean? Like,
for the solar returns, you look at the ascendant?
sure. I mean, that's going to help me know the whole chart, right? So I'll know the place, I'll know which planet's ruling what house.
But does it matter? Do you think, okay, well, Pluto matters more in this chart, or no? It's just about the house positions.
No, Pluto matters a lot, right? And Mars.
Yeah.
So in like that case, yeah. Or like the one we're in right now, right? Like that Pluto retrograde in the 3rd, I remember it, but like it was also retrograding back to come into Capricorn. So you have to like think of like the phase it's in, not just the placement, just the whole phase it's in and what it's going to do and what it's going to do on the other side. So even though Pluto is going to return again in the chart of the solar return, so if somebody, just a traditional astrologer is going to be like, if they're not really thinking, be like, oh, 2024 solar return was Pluto in Aquarius and so was 2025. But a smart astrologer would be like, oh, in between that was Pluto back in Capricorn. So that's not a normal Pluto in the 2024 chart. 2025, it's like, that's a fucking Pluto. You know what I mean? So that means it's more auspicious and more weird.
So the United States is not on life support. It's just poised to...
No, the life support that's being cut away is social services and the federal government size. Because Pluto is like inflated or getting too fat to where it kind of reminds me of that Stephen King book, Thinner.
I don't know that one.
So like, why is the whole country shooting up Ozempic right now? It's an example of where the country is shooting up Ozempic with the federal government.
It's just...
I know that might sound very creepy to some that understand that there was Stephen King made a book called Thinner. And then they actually made it a movie, and it was a creepy ass movie, right? Where he starts to get really fucking creepy ass old and thin,
When
right?
did that come out?
The movie came out in 96, but I think the book came out in the years 84, ironically enough.
The movie is from 96?
So we're in the same Saturn as Thinner. Let the curse fit the crime, Thinner.
That's crazy.
So if you think about the country shooting itself up with Ozempic and thinking it's all normal. but they're mad that the federal government's cutting itself down. So that's a projection. Like that's the most interesting part of America is like the most upset people about it are the ones shooting up Ozempic.
So they're the Uranus and Gemini people, or sixth house. Is that?
Yeah, like how many people are on Ozempic now? 15 million people. So they haven't cut 15 million federal workers yet, right? But 15 million people, 6% of the population, and it's growing, are instead of getting the weight off, just shooting up an experimental drug that they have no idea what the long-term effects are and becoming really thin, but having their bones cancers, having all these crazy things go. And they're mad that the government's wanting to thin itself down. I love this shit.
But what is it? I mean,
you mean thin.
But in the chart, so you confuse me, right? Because the government should want to thin itself. Is that what you're saying?
Correct, because it's not really the people. If you elect somebody that says, I'm going to cut the federal government down, and he does it, and you're fucking having a tizzy and throwing a fucking fit. That's what the people wanted. And even the polls show that the people want it still, even after the media is trying to say they don't. Mm-hmm. Right? But the federal government, like, we're in the worst out of our lives, right? And so the country's fatter than it could ever be. And so finally, somebody's using Ozempic and somebody's pissed when most people now are moving to the same thing.
But
that's what's so funny,
too, though, that it's the money's behind the power, though, right? The power is about the people with the money, and the people with the money are the drug companies. I mean, there are some of the people with the money.
No, okay, so I'm going to give a good example of like the cancer issue in the country of like being a cancer. It's crabby, right? Like when you're shooting yourself up with Ozempic to be thinner, you have no problem with the risks or whatever to make, because that's all you want. I just want to look thin. But when somebody else is doing what was elected to shrink down the government and shoot the government with Ozempic, you get crabby. Like, oh, why are they doing that as you're doing the same thing? Right? Like, I can't believe they don't clean their fucking garage like I do. Like, those are cancer problems. Like, cancers are like, I can't believe that person watches their kid that way. It's like, that's not your kid. Like, you're a parent, and that parent's that parent. So like cancer problems are always like, I would do it this way. That's the best way that I feel, because cancer's emotions are in Libra and very judgmental, right? So their fourth house is Libra. So it's and so we have Saturn there. If you use the American chart without houses and you use it from a solar perspective, the country is an emotional crab that has to learn to get out of the emotion and be an adult and just be like, your little cries about things are not really being heard unless it's serious as fuck. So it's the story of the country. It's the story of the country that cries wolf. Like the country's cried wolf about everything so much, right? Like, imagine a world where Trump's president and like abortion will be taken away, and like right now nobody's saying anything about abortion anymore. So it cried wolf about that, right? So. The idea of like, if you don't get a COVID shot, you're going to kill everyone. Cried wolf. It's going to work 100%. You won't even have to wear a mask. Oh, wait, sorry, you don't have to wear a mask. That the country cries wolf so much about matters that the country's having to learn what's emotionally really hardcore truth that's really out of whack. Fourth house, Saturn, to the sun in Cancer, first house. And that's where the crabby issues of judgment are in the country, or cancers themselves, or cancer rising. So the most judgmental, emotional people on the planet. But they're looking at it from their own perspective. Like, I would never do that. I can't believe you do that.
So if you have Saturn there, then it's.
So if you're a Cancer with Saturn in Libra, yeah, it's fucking hardcore.
It's, you get worse, you get more judgmental, or do you get checked on?
You get checked, and then you learn not to be so judgmental. Because usually you get checked by getting judged upon on things you don't want to be judged on. So it's kind of like looking in the emotional mirror of like your own like the justice will come back to you.
It's funny because it's almost
know?
like checks and balances played out in the chart. So you have the Supreme Court, and that's what its position, what it's meant to do. And that's the 10th house, right? Or
In
no?
the natal chart,
Or no,
yes,
in
but
the-
in the
okay.
solar, it's the 4th. Right? So I always look at the solar in my mind first, like,
Yeah.
right? Because if you were doing an astrology for the mundane astrology at the time, you'd be like, oh, well, that's 7th house. And well, it's a 7th house sun. So like Saturn's in the 7th house, right? You can look at it that way too, right? But like, you know, it always comes down to like, most people don't want to look at it, but like your chart's more strong in the solar position and the planets are where they're at solar are than your natal chart. Like all of your problems will always be like, you might look at like, somebody might look at their chart and be like, oh my God, I can't believe, you know, it's in this house or whatever. And I'll look at it and I'll be like, let's say it's a 7th houser, for example, right? So that's the problem in America, right? Saturn at the 10th house. Really, solar-wise, it's in the 4th. It's all flipped. All the planets, you just flip. It's easy with those people. Their problem is always the opposite. It's like, your problem isn't that you don't know how to work. Your problem is that you get really emotional over the work. You get really, the country's problem is like, you know, aiming high, but not knowing how to really take care of yourself and then demanding that everybody do things that are unfair to take care of you. Like, I worked hard. I deserve I deserve all this benefits back. You didn't save the money yourself? Like, squirrels don't go out into the wild and then go, I worked really hard and got a lot of fucking nuts, but I didn't bring it back to the fucking nest. That's the problem in America. Like, I just want the government to come in and do that for me. I worked hard. You saw I worked hard. But it's like, being a squirrel, the whole part of working hard is then bringing home what you need.
Don't you mean, so right before this, we were watching Jackie and Shadow, the big bear eagles,
That's true.
right? And that eagle sits on the nest no matter what. The
No matter
wind,
what.
the snow is blowing it away. It sits there. And then it gets the fish comes in from whoever brings it.
Or the crows, right when the third one just hatched, a circle of crows came up, and that's where she had to put up her wings and just sit there for 3 hours and protect them from being eaten. Right? So, and that's funny because that's the bird that's the national bird of America, the bald eagle, right? The American bald eagle. Yeah. And ironically, the one that we know of that is having babies right now is in California. How weird. But that's the interesting part of Saturn in the 4th house solar to the country. It's a crabby emotion. It needs to stop getting so emotional. And that's weird for a Cancer. Right? But it's Saturn, so it's exalted. And it's like Cancers do best in life when they are emotional adults. Because every Cancer, when they're young, you know, if the blow dryer's gone, they yell at their sibling like fucking so loud and freak out. I can't go to school. I can't go to school. I don't have a blow dryer. Oh my God. Mom, my thing, my nose. I'm sick. I can't do it. They are the roughest fucking bunch of fucking souls on the planet at the beginning. Oh my God. God bless me having soon to be a Cancer son for the first 10 years or 12 years. Let's say 7 with the Saturn. It's 7, but then by 14, they kind of get better, and then it's like a little bit more drama with other people and shit. By the time they get to their Saturn return, Cancers get a little better, but when they get to that second Saturn return, like the worst are 58-year-old crabs. Those are what we call the Karens. Because they're trying to do the baby thing all over again, and with entitlement. So the other thing is entitlement, Saturn, right? And so there's this entitlement emotionally for America that doesn't have the entitlements. The demanding an emotional entitlement when really Saturn's in the 10th saying, no, you should know how to conserve what you need. So the country's framework was not to bail out every individual. It was to protect them. But that's what comes with the cost of freedom is you're on no leash. And that means that we're here to just defend and make sure that you can live your life freely. not have Social Security. So Social Security is going to leave, like I've predicted for a long time. It's the end of that. This is the lunar eclipse that's going to begin that crack of that egg. Pardon my egg reference with baby little birds coming out.
I like that reference, though. I like having a visual reference that can help me understand the whole picture, but I really just did want to try to understand the nature of the United States, because I think we've been through, always the United States gets projected on, I think, by the rest of the world. Also, the other thing would be Americans abroad. Like, Americans in the rest of the world stand out so much, right? And you always hear about, the loud Americans here and there. And then you've got people in our country who are ashamed of that, right? And I think that there's been a lot of effort to make us feel like we need to contain that aspect, like the people need to contain the loud aspect of being an American. But it sounds to me like that's in the chart.
Yeah,
To
so
be a
if
cranky person and to bring all of our stuff and to have our blow dryers and all of our modern conveniences wherever we go.
why do you think the country that created electricity, we are the only ones that use the 110 outlet plug, like us, and then Canada does. Every other country uses this weird ass shit because they wanted to do that because they hate America. 2, Mars in Gemini with Uranus in Gemini with a Sag rising with a North Node in Leo. The most loudest people are supposed to be free and are free. The freest people are the loudest. So the people who are the most shackled don't want to see others in their freedom. And that's actually in the chart. But like the main thing too is Mars and Gemini not being loud, right? And of course it's going to rub people off. So 7th house is with Mars there. It's very abrasive in the 7th house. So you could be walking by somebody and it's an American. That Mars and Gemini in the 7th house is very like loud and hey kids, you know what I mean? Like, look at this little thing. I can't believe this. You know what I mean? Like the Sag adventure. Well, everybody in Europe's just like.
And in Canada, from your past experience.
Especially in Canada, yeah. Well, it's funny to see them try the patriotic thing. It's not really, they got hockey. Tried. It was crazy because if you just see their election, this went with like the guy who was head of the Bank of England, who was the biggest, like, the woman should have won that one. She actually speaks like the people and she's a liberal and everything. Like, how did she not win? It was like a rigged election up there because they want to go into a trade war.
Is it an election?
So,
was it an election or was
for
it
inside the Liberal Party, right? To
Okay,
have the
right.
prime minister, yeah.
I just thought it was interesting because we have a high vibe viewer on the app who put a comment that his name is something Carney, right? And
The circus has shown up with the
I know
carnies.
right away I thought that's so funny. It's another one of your
He was the
your
head of the Bank of
predictions.
England.
Interesting.
And everybody says to me, no, Canada's separate from England. It's like, oh, yeah, right. Talk to your Governor General and King Charles about that one.
Yeah, when I looked him up on Wikipedia, right underneath it says something about the Crown of England. I don't remember what it is, but it right under his name, there's a reference to the fact that it's connected to the government of Great Britain or United Kingdom. So anyway.
At the end of the day, he's got to check in, even if the Liberals put him up as prime minister, the King's got to, through the Governor General, communicate his grace over it. People don't remember that part of it.
Say, okay, it's like, it's just a formula or form or
I know.
whatever. It doesn't mean anything. It just happens automatically. But I mean, when we looked at the chart of the United States, we definitely don't have that aspect of just a rubber stamping kind of, things happen and then it's rubber stamped by a higher authority. It's definitely an internal dynamic, like a family. We have family feuds. We have family businesses. It feels very much like it's a kin network or something, like a network of people who are related, but different. I don't know. It seems like that's in the chart.
Yeah, I mean, I think the funny part too, it's, they always call this a Christian nation. It's Freemasons that were the ones that set it up, and it's all Mason based. But even Joseph Smith creating the Mormon church was a Mason. And the way that they work is Masonic. And what's the prophecy of Joseph Smith? That Jerusalem will fall and it will move to America. So everybody's saying that Jews are ruling the world, yet all the Christians secretly can't wait for it to fall. That's the secret nobody wants. So that's Mercury retrograde in Cancer. Is like, the secret is everybody wants Jerusalem to fall. You know why? Because their prophecy gets done. Whether you're a Mormon or whether you're a Christian, your revelations come true. Yeah. That's technically supposed to happen. And 70% of the country is Christian.
It kind of reminds
me. Right? So the idea that, it's because of anti-Semitism is ironic, because actually, if you believe in that faith, aren't you being anti-Semitic to believe in that it will fall?
I think
that's the biggest question I have of like my not Christian religion-based life.
Well, I was going to say, with Neptune intercepted in the chart, I mean, with Pisces intercepted, would that mean the religion isn't just part of who we are, right? Would you see spirituality as Pisces or not?
Of course, yeah. I mean, it's both. Jupiter's both Pisces and Sag. I think the more spiritual, like without having a church, is Pisces. The church is Sag, because it has its bishops, it has its structures in place. It's an organization, right? So that's what's interesting, is like the country was founded not off a Christian one. It believed in Christian ideas and so forth, but it was actually Mason. So, but Masons don't believe that any religion's right. They believe that we all believe in one God. That's why it's all about just in God we trust, or they speak of God. They don't say Jesus. Right? So that's what's crazy about people who are actually technically Christian, is like in their Bible, that if you believe in all of Christ's words and revelations, then that means you are going to witness the fall of that, and you have to embrace that as okay. But if you actually, in the looking at the terms of anti-Semitism, the idea of the fall of Israel is a part of anti-Semitism. So you have 70% of the country that's anti-Semitic. Nobody wants to answer me that question.
I think that is in the definition of anti-Semitism, isn't it? That if you
wish for the end of those people and the end of the fall of that country, and
I mean, because I was even teaching. I'm teaching right now the history of the Renaissance and Reformation, and so we're getting to the point where we start talking about the Reformation, and I have to talk about religion. And I was up there thinking, I hope that, because I'm talking about Christianity, I don't get called anti-Semitic up here. But yeah, anyway, your whole thing about talking about wanting to be pro-Israel and pro-Jerusalem because it needs to exist, or this revelation of it's going to fall one day, reminds me of Hansel and Gretel, when the witch is saying, come and eat all this candy, and like, you have a great time, and then you find out, oh, she's planning to cook us.
Right. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm probably the most not anti-Semitic person, because I actually am trying to protect Israel from the Jews. I mean, from the Christians. But I think the greatest threat to Israel is Christians.
Well, it always has been.
Yeah. So, and then even in the prophecies in Mormonism, like Mormons can't wait for Jerusalem to be in America. That's the prophecy. And so Mitt Romney ironically leaves, the top Mormon, after the temple in DC is the revamp and the billions of dollars is up. The only actual like temple church that's prominent in Washington DC is the Mormon one, right? It's kind of like if you're in New York City and you look down and you're on, Wall Street and you look down, you see Trinity Church where it was being built when Washington took his oath at the first Congress. They're kind of like symbolic places, right? So the symbolic church, ironically enough, the one that's so beautiful, it's in Washington, is the Mormon church. The Mormon temple, sorry, there's no church, it's a temple.
They have those everywhere.
So,
I mean, like, have you seen the one in San Diego? Have you ever gone past that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, usually if you are in a city in America and you think, wow, what is that? Like, and you can see it for miles away, it's always a Mormon temple or whatever it's called, worship center.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really know, but
Well, I mean, I've just paid attention because you know what? They also keep family history, which and so historians really like the Mormon church for the structure of it,
Well, and that's to understand the spiritual children that come through and that sometimes they're brought back from the dead. Like, it's kind of like the idea of past lives. So one of your dead ancestors might have come back and waited in line a long time because they do they do baptisms of the dead in the Mormon Church. So I think it's interesting that it is a weird question we're in as a country because I just feel like the egging on of like, go support Israel is kind of like creating the war that makes the Christians. What my number one thing I said 2 years ago with this whole transit starting in 2020, or it was actually 2022, right? It was after October 7th. So that was in 2023 when I did that at the old studios, when I said, this is where the Christians are going to try to get back into the Holy Land, right? And it feels like this is a push of the Christians, the Muslims, and the Jews to all triangulate and separate and fight over the Holy Land again. And that's actually what people are not talking about. They're looking at like Hitler's idea of it, which is incorrect. I'm going to be honest with people. Like, the Mormons don't care about the Jews, they care about the tribes of Israel, and they go back to the old Church of Jesus, which had prophets, people who speak in tongues, all that stuff. If you read the Mormons' understanding of like their doctrine, they don't believe in the Trinity. It's a different way to look at it. So they're not into the whole like following Christianity the way it is, right? But if you look at where 70% of all capital so if you're on PayPal in a business, if you're on Stripe and you're a business, and where most business loans come from, all of America's Mormon-based banks out of Utah. Now, most RV loans for Can-Ams, your motorcycle, your boats. Look at the address, Utah. So the idea that the Jews control the world is fucking retarded at this point, because I don't think that they're investing in homes in China. Right. So that's been something that spirals out of control at this end of Uranus and Taurus, is this idea that one person that's kind of leading a whole people like Hitler is in control of all of the world, and that is up against that group of people. So really weird because it never works. And then when you actually do the history, you look, no, actually they weren't in control of everything. So it's like there is no one group in control of everything. That's impossible. Taurus, nobody's in control of your shoes in your house. You are. So people have to look at their own environment to look for truth. That's Gemini, right? So are the Jews in control of your fucking watch that's on you? You chose that watch and you have that watch. And I don't think they're controlling when you decide to put it on a charger when it's dead or not. I mean, like people are really needing to kind of get out of like putting one group as everything. Because we did that last time with Muslims being the one that are all bad and all terrorists. And that didn't end up well either. So I think that that's where America's fight gets weird, is if it actually is like, remove the way the government shouldn't be religious. Church and state have to be separate. And let the religions fight out their own shit however they got to. And people are allowed to say whatever they want. So like the situation happening right now is really weird with that foreigner who's got like a green card here, who's, you know, being pulled away because he put a bunch of anti-Semitic stuff up. It's kind of like, why is the government getting involved with that? Like, it really doesn't need to. But that's where I understand where people go, oh, well, see, that proves that Israel's controlling America. To me, it's more like, well, looking at the chart, it might be doing them a favor, right? Or it might be actually trying to stop a problem that they just are like done at college campuses with it getting out of hand, because a lot of Jews got, you know, like it's kind of like there's that justice thing in America, Saturn and Libra, like, you did this, we're going to do that back. You know what I mean? So it could just kind of be coming from that. But to me, it's kind of like government needs to stay out of religion. And it's also freedom of speech and it's First Amendment stuff. So it's really, you know, I think that that's where the Trump administration's really dumb at this point for getting involved in any of that shit. When they say, oh, we're all about free speech. Especially, it's not just free speech, it's freedom of religion. Same amendment. So you're allowed to, I guess they're trying to get him on that he was also making flyers that was for a terrorist organization and making people go do bad things. So it's not so much that he spoke out against it, it's the actions he did with the speech, which that makes more sense. If you're allowed to have free speech, but to go do something about it that's illegal, or to, you know, so it's a dicey area if you look deeper into it, but it needs to be in court. So people always project, but you might not know the classified stuff, you know, that they got on him.
Yeah. I just think in general, right now is not the time to be following any kind of idea blindly about one group being a problem.
Right.
And yeah, look suspiciously on when the government decides, oh, we're going to follow, I mean, I don't think it's right for any side of the government to get that involved in issues like that. I don't know what else to say about it, but yeah, I think it's just not the time to do the big story of there's one person who's behind everything. There's one group. It's just to deflect, or I don't know. Keep your eye on what's really going on is what I have to say.
I'll end with this. Our allies, the French at the beginning, they came and did whatever they could to help us. And then when they needed help, we didn't show up. So it feels like with Eris, right? And Aries right now. And the last time that Eris was at 23, 24 degrees was when the Spanish invaded the Aztecs, right? And their excuse for it was that they were eating human people, right? And then they just said it's better to do blood sacrifice by drinking wine instead of eating people. So it's the Trojan horse that Eris rules. So I feel like America doing this support Israel thing is a Trojan horse, because what it does is that does open the gate in to the Holy Land that they believe. And so that'll rattle people's brains for a long time, especially Jews.
I just think,
you know what I mean?
Why do we continue to care about the Holy Land? That's a whole nother
That's
show.
That's the age of Pisces.
And we've talked about that in other shows.
It's only the last 2,000 years, the real fight over it.
Yeah, it just never goes well. And yeah, let's not worry about the Holy Land anymore. But, you know, on the other hand, I don't agree if people are being persecuted because of their religious beliefs anywhere in the world. And I mean, and it's interesting because you had talked about the Holy Land as maybe ending up to be this place that'd be like Disneyland or right where it's an area where you can go in and see it, and it's made to be nice so that you can get there and do whatever it is and leave. I think you said something like that, didn't you?
I mean, they try to say that that's what it is now, but it ain't.
But that's what the Knights Templar were supposed to be doing. Or for how many centuries are we going to be trying to make the Holy Land a place that?
Well, who made the tunnels that are used in Hamas now? It was the Templar Knights.
We'll have to talk about that in another show. People like tunnels and secret tunnels and all of that. We should talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, well, and really a lot of those tunnels, because it wasn't just them, it was also, Saladin's people and stuff like that, right? It was the tunnels were all meant in the Holy Wars 800 years ago. So that's what's weird now is it's being used in a holy war that they're not saying is a holy war.
But America doesn't have a place taken aside in a holy war, and it's in the chart, right?
Well, that's going to be the thing is America will not show up when needed in the holy war.
Oh.
And I think a lot of people are going to be exposed as to why. Like the other thing is like the Pope, he's dying right now. He doesn't care. He hasn't said much about the Israel thing. The same way the Pope did at the end of Uranus and Taurus and was shaking hands and having letters and correspondences with Hitler. Let's not forget that. Right? So when it comes to Ukraine, the Pope loves to talk about that situation because there's Nazis in Ukraine. It's a fact. Right? When you go to talk about Israel and that whole thing, the Pope's not really for Israel much. But the same popes at the end of Uranus and Taurus that really want to help the side that's against that side because they want that land back. So that's where, but America ain't going to get involved. It looks like it will, but it won't. America's going to watch the destruction like it did in World War II. Let's watch everybody and let's give everybody all of our gear, just like we did to the British, right? Let's watch all those HMSs that were our boats get fucking sunk by the British. By the Nazis. Let's watch everything. Let's watch the raids of London and the bombings of London happen. Just sit back here and watch it happen.
That's a really good
that's what's
example.
happening right now.
Because we did not go and there was so many films were created to try to pull on our sympathy, like our heartstrings to make us want to go. But that was
at the movie theater, yeah.
Yeah, but that was appealing directly to the people, and the people aren't the government, really. I mean, so it shows your point of we might want to, we might feel like, oh yes, let's go help them, but we really need to have our dowry in place before we move, before we go form our relationship with someone, or before we go participate in an alliance. We really think hard and
it's kind of like we only have so much to store, especially ships. So if you think of Uranus and Taurus at the end, it was us selling all of our old equipment and giving it to the British, right? And then what did we do? We started building new stuff. And that's what we're doing now. Trump just signed the ship deals. He already did that with the military when he was in power, when Uranus came into Taurus. So the military has been, I've been saying for a long time, been acting like it's weak and it doesn't have anything. When we built up the military, the biggest ever in Uranus and Taurus, and acting like a lame duck, like, my wing's broken, right? Just like we did with FDR. Oh, we're just a neutral country. I have polio. I'm giving you Social Security, right? That was all probably a scam. But put him in a wheelchair. Everybody will accept that, That's what's crazy is then what happens? Uranus comes into Gemini and all of our fighting power just pops out of fucking nowhere. Mm-hmm. While we were watching London be fucking destroyed every night in London raids, watching our boats we gave, like we're watching Ukrainian stuff just get blown out of smithereens and be sold to, it's being found in Mexico right now, all the stuff we gave to Ukraine. So, you know, we're just watching all of the old shit just get blown up and acting like we care when we really don't. We're waiting for the moment to where everybody beats the living shit out of each other, and then we show up. And we have way more power, and then we overpower them. So when the deal with Israel to give weapons too is like, well, great. You guys are going to be taxed, going all over and fucking all these people up. And then those people, now we won't have to worry about Hamas as much. And we're not going to worry about you because you're going to be so taxed and you're going to be begging for our weapons. People don't think about how America works. That's how America works. Like negotiation, 7th house. I know 7th house knows exactly when they can leave a relationship and when what they can get out of a relationship. And they will take everything that you've got. Take everything you got. So that's what America is, in my opinion. We will be your best friend and divorce you when you didn't think it was possible. And then out of nowhere, we'll jump to the fucking friend that you thought we would never align with again, or that we would never, how are they with them now? That's 7th house. Like, you really are just trying to copy the last husband or wife you had exactly again? Every time. Same problems. That's a sign.
Someone's got a problem outside.
Right? So if you had a problem with a wife that constantly honked and never let off the honking the whole time she drove, you'd be like, okay, here's a new girl, and this is exactly it. And now she screams, ah! when she drives. And it's like, oh man, when am I going to find one? And it's like, oh, that's 7th house problems. 7th house sons. So, like, people have to look at it how America looks at it and use history. America is just sitting and watching everybody, use their troops, use the weapons. And when the weapons we give are all the stuff that has an expiration date and probably already did expire. Already is probably leaking ordnance. Like, give that to Israel. Give that to Ukraine. Give that to Israel. Give that to Ukraine. Our stockpile's old, and this stuff, we don't want to have to deal with this shit because it's starting to go fucking weird. Starting to get that weird smell. I don't know if you've ever been in a room full of like bombs, but it smells.
No.
Yeah, when I was in the Navy and when they brought the ordnance and sidewinders or the bigger bombs to drop off on an F-18, and I worked with the OD guys, like that shit, like you know, you can smell ordnance. It's weird. Like, whoa, a whiff. And you can smell when it gets old. It kind of reminds me of like old film smell.
I've smelled that. So.
You know, or like radio, like not radioactive. I haven't been around a nuke, but I've been around like, you know, tens of thousands of pounds of ordnance, right? So yeah, it smells. It's got a smell, and it gets old. It's like old bullets.
I don't know what that smells like either.
Or the feel of it, like an old bullet, you can just tell it's old. You don't know if the hammer's gonna actually deliver. So that's the stuff we give right now, and we did that last time. That's why all the British ships sunk. They were all our old ships. They were like our boats from like the time of the Titanic. Like, so people aren't realizing that the stuff we give Ukraine is like the stuff that was like really hot back at the time of like the Vietnam War. We're not like, we've given a couple of our nice stuff, but not like the nicest of the night. Like we're talking like 20 years ago technology. Like, yeah, okay, cool. Like, we didn't give them our new B-2 bomber that's classified on what it does. So do we really want them to win? Because if we really wanted somebody to win, whether it's Biden or Trump, you would give everything. You would give like the best of the best of the best. You would give our best shit. You would give our whole fucking, like, you would be like, I have a couple aircraft carriers I can give you right now on loan and just take them out right now. Just get all your land back. You might lose some of your people, but you get the land back. Just send 12 F-18s up there, send a couple things, and just fucking, it's over. We're not doing that. So in war, when it's like this little tit for tat thing, it's intentional. And same thing goes with the the Israeli thing. We're just giving that to make Israel like beg for us. And right when they need it, we'll say, no, we can't. and that's how we get into that's how you heiress yourself in. So again, everybody's reading this whole fucking thing so wrong, and whatever said on X or whatever said on Blue Sky or whatever said on fucking CNN, and they're not using any history, and they're not using astrology, and they're not, you know. So I sit around and laugh, just as much as all the left on the Democrat Party and the right are laughing too, and know the same info. And they're just intentionally watching the country feed off the TV and become drones and become the herd that will follow exactly when America says no more weapons to Israel and sorry Ukraine, it's not going to work out, and we need to go over whatever we have to do, and we're going to team back up with Russia again and go after China. Everybody will like look at this period as like, I can't believe I fell for that shit. America.
All right.
Last words, Dan?
No, I enjoyed this exploration of America's natal chart, and I hope other people did too. And I'm looking forward to hearing people's ideas for what they'd like us to cover in the show. We always say that, but I want to see comments. I would like to see people letting us know what they'd like us to cover.
Yeah, I would too. That would help out a lot. And next week on Tuesday, I'm doing my big 2025 survival guide. I haven't done one since 2020.
And that one was a good one.
That one was gnarly.
Yeah.
For everything about more future-based, not going so much of the past and here's what's going to happen now that we're here. So, and all my new findings with Nostradamus that I said at Conscious Life Expo, but of course, I only had limited time to actually I didn't even tell you before I did that. I kept Dan on her toes.
Yeah, that was a good one though. It was really good. So if you're covering that on Tuesday, I would say people definitely need to see that.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people, even myself, didn't understand it fully till that level kind of came, the 4 years of the work, and being like, oh my gosh. What were those books he burned? And what's so important about, if he's using dates, the one that's not seen in the book is the most important one. And that's the year that changes everything. So, yeah. So anyway, it's gonna be fun, and join us on High Vibe TV. And that was fun, Ann. And I hope people got something out of this. And I would say, follow, your own life. Don't follow what everybody's telling you out there, especially mainstream. Like, at this point, at this high in the game of all this Pisces, it's the biggest deception ever. The same deception in 1940. We're neutral. We're never going to go into war. In 1940, men were driving around with their wives, planning their families. That's what's so sad, is how many children that were born in the baby boom, their fathers were killed in the war. Like, those are the ones that we don't talk about. So many wives that just had no idea in 1940 that their lives would change the next year. So many Pluto Sages in 1777 and 78 who thought they were going to maybe go to a college in one of the colonies, but ended up with a gun and a bayonet and a blue outfit, if they were lucky. Yeah. Yep. So much love. We'll see you soon. Adios. Bye.
Yo. Okay.
please.